Stand up, New York Giants fans. I was going to make a video. I've been making videos recently. Haven't made a video in about 4 or 5 days because there hasn't been a lot to talk about. I've been waiting on the New York Giants to figure out who the defensive coordinator was going to be, and I figured that would be my next video. I thought it was going to happen this past week. Still hasn't happened. And I thought this was an interesting story that came out. We'll talk about the defensive coordinator. We'll talk about my line of reasoning as to why Kafka may be intrigued by a lateral move other than just the obvious. And I'll pull up the article from Yahoo Sports that Dan Benton wrote on, but I want to give my overall opinion on all of it from Daboll's perspective, obviously Kafka's perspective, and everybody else. I know a lot of Giants fans are panicking right now with both the defensive coordinator. First off, I'll say this. As far as the DC goes, I think the longer, and what's going on, everybody? What's going on, Alan, man? What's going on, Ryan Edwards? What's going on, Little Robbie? Toby in the chat, Stephen Lilly in the chat, Chris Goliath in the chat. I think as far as the, figured I'd hang out with you guys for a bit today. I was going to do the video, but I said it's Sunday, have a few hours, I'll pop on, we'll talk Giants football. As far as the defensive coordinator thing goes, I think a lot of people are panicking and they're saying, well, at this point, if you don't rush and you don't grab your guy, you're going to miss out. I've seen a lot of people say that on Twitter, but at this point, you're not really competing with very many teams, right? Most teams at this stage in the game already have their defensive coordinator. I think us and maybe the Cowboys, if I'm not mistaken, are the only two vacancies left. Maybe there's another team. Maybe somebody in the chat could correct me if I'm wrong. So at this point, being that it's been this long of a process, if you're the Giants, you might as well make sure you get the right guy. And all reports are that the Giants are potentially interested in Brendan Daly of the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, the Chiefs are playing in the Super Bowl this year. And yes, it is late. Yes, I would prefer that the defensive coordinator would have been hired by now. He hasn't been. But you go back and look when we hired Wink. We didn't hire him until February 11th. And if you recall, the guy that the Giants were interested then was Patrick Graham. Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen actually wanted to retain Patrick Graham. Graham then left the team after, at least presumably, he was not happy with the way that the Brian Flores things was handled, and he went off to the Raiders, and he became the defensive coordinator there, which is a clear indicator that, at least in the past, Brian Daboll was interested in working with people that he was familiar with, which only makes sense for a head coach coming in. Wink Martindale and Daboll never really worked. Not really. They did not work together, but he was a guy that had good credentials. He did a good job with the Baltimore Ravens for the most part while he was there, and he brought him on. We've heard about all the friction. We've heard about all the tension between Daboll and obviously Wink. I think all signs point to Daly at this point, and I'm going to say why. But I was leaning it was going to be Henderson because of the familiarity and everything else. I think all signs point to Daly. Daboll worked with Daly while he was with the New England Patriots for a few years. Also, Patterson, who's the defensive line coach for the New York Giants, worked with Daly, I think, for at least 1, if not 2 years with the Minnesota Vikings. And why would you continue to wait? If you were going to hire Henderson at this point, I think he would have been hired. Now, it's entirely possible that the New York Giants want to have that final interview with Daly before they come to the conclusion as we're going to go ahead and give the go-ahead to Henderson. Maybe that's possible, but I think Brendan Daly all of a sudden is now the odds-on favorite to become the New York Giants defensive coordinator. That's just a prediction. I have no sources. That's just how I feel in terms of what he'll bring to this defense. I don't know. He's never been a defensive play caller, defensive coordinator. He's been a defensive line coach for several different organizations, as well as the linebacker coach, I think, for the last 2 or 3 years with Kansas City. You've seen the job that Spags has done with them this year. So clearly a guy that at least hopefully will bring some intrigue to the New York Giants and give us a little bit of hope going into next year. But the sooner they get that done, the better, regardless of who they choose as the defensive coordinator. But I'm going to talk to a couple of people in the chat before we get to the other topic, and then I'll just hang out and talk with you guys about Giants, whatever else you may want to talk about in regards to the offseason. But I really wanted to talk about the Kafka situation because that seems to be a big talking point on Twitter. A lot of people are going crazy about it. But John, thank you for being here, man. What's going on, man? How do you feel about not getting yeah, Luke, I'm going to talk about that in 1 second. Let me just respond to Stephen Lilly, who's been with me forever. He says, hi, bud. Hope all is good. Looking forward to the draft. Who you got for the Super Bowl? Super Bowl, I'm picking the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are the hot team. I think the Niners are the better team, but the Chiefs are the hot team. I'm going with the hot team. Mahomes has looked like an animal. So, well, not so much. The defense has really looked like an animal. Mahomes looked great in the first half last week, but their defense has been fantastic all year. And I think defense is going to win. As good as the Niners are, I just think the Chiefs are hot, so they're my pick And yeah, I can't wait for the draft. I can't wait to see what we end up with. What's up, Mizrahi, man? What's going on, man? How do you feel about not getting Denard Wilson? Yeah, I mean, listen, I think as far as the Denard Wilson thing goes, uh, it seemed like that was the guy that Giants fans identified were all in on once they heard the list of candidates. And I don't know how he would have turned out, much like the guy Daly I was just talking about from the Chiefs. He's never been a defensive coordinator, so there's no concrete evidence there. He's done a good job, obviously, as the DB coach with the Baltimore Ravens, but there's no way anybody could tell me fact. They know for a fact he would have been great. So all these guys to me are unknowns. I think the mob or the most Giant fans identified he was the guy. But what does that mean? What does that mean? I mean, I'm guilty of it too. A lot of the times, I wanted Matt Rule. That probably wouldn't have turned out well. Much like a lot of Giants fans wanted Matt Rule. So I'm not gonna get too bent out of shape. Whoever they hire, you got to hope works well with Dable and does a good job. But it's not like he was like a guy with incredible credentials that you knew was going to come in here and be a top 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 defensive coordinator in football. Yeah, I think the main reason why he didn't take this job was because the defense he wasn't going to get to choose his defensive coaching staff. That's what several people have now said, and it makes sense, being that the Giants want to retain our Henderson probably as the DB coach, and they want to retain the defensive line coach. Not to mention, you have less of a guarantee that you're going to get multiple years here if you sign on as the defensive coordinator, as opposed to where he went, where they hired a head coach with him in the first year. So they would have gotten probably 2 if, he knows he's going to get at least 2 years where he went. With the Giants, if Dable gets fired, you don't know. So it is what it is. I don't think he didn't come here because the Giants are this awful organization. It just wasn't the best fit for him. So that's my outlook on that. What's up, Milkman, man? Thanks for popping in the stream, man. What's going on, John, man? Thanks for popping in. Ryan D says, can we fast forward to the draft? Hopefully soon. Savage says, hey, Chris, what are your thoughts on Bowers? Honestly, I do not want Bowers at 6. I'm never a tight end guy in the top 5 picks, 10 picks, whatever. He's really good, but not where we're picking. But I wanted to get into the article and not with the needs our team currently has. What's up, Afghanistan? Good to see you, man. I wanted to get into the article that I wanted to talk about today. And that, of course, is, and B. Chris, stand up, new member. What's going on, man? Let's get into the Kafka story. I think that's the biggest story of the day, or the biggest story of yesterday. This came out from Dan Benton today. I think Benton, if I'm not mistaken, this is from Yahoo Sports. He also works on Giants Wire. But let's just read the article real quick. New York Giants offensive coordinator Mike Kafka was considered a finalist for the Seattle Seahawks head coaching job after back-to-back interviews. However, the position ultimately went to Mike Macdonald. Mike Macdonald, if you're not familiar, was the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. Did a really good job there, and obviously that's why he got hired as the head coach. Once Macdonald landed in Seattle, many saw that as a sign Kafka would remain with the Giants in 2024. That much is likely true, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's how Kafka wanted things to play out. There have been multiple reports that suggest his relationship with head coach Brian Dable has deteriorated and that an unhappy Kafka wanted out of East Rutherford. ESPN's Jordan Renan also reported that Kafka might be open to a lateral move if it meant a fresh start elsewhere. Mike Kafka, the more I hear, the less likely it is, and I know he's still there now. Even if he doesn't get a head coaching job, I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants let him out and he ends up somewhere else anyway. Renan said he's unhappy. That possibility arose on Saturday when the Seahawks, impressed by Kafka during his head coaching interview, requested to interview him for their vacant offensive coordinator job, which then was reported that the Giants blocked him, which we've become all too familiar with as Giants fans. Several coaches that we've tried to bring in to be our defensive coordinator have been blocked from the teams that we were trying to steal them from. So the Giants did the same thing here when Seattle, who originally had brought Kafka in to be the potential head coach candidate, were so impressed by him. They said, all right, well, we didn't hire him there. We want to at least see if he'd be the OC. Valued might be a strong word. It's unclear if Kafka will retain play calling duties in 2024 after having them stripped multiple times this past season. After firing special teams coordinator Thomas McGahee and parting ways with defensive coordinator Wink Martindale, it's more likely the Giants want to keep Kafka around in order to maintain some level of stability. Dable losing all 3 of his handpicked coordinators, each of whom reportedly wanted out, would not have looked good from an optics standpoint. Ultimately, the reports and speculation no longer matter. With all of the league's head coaching vacancies filled, Kafka will remain with the Giants whether he likes it or not. Now I wanted to talk about it from Kafka's perspective, from Dable's perspective. I think Benton brings up a good point. Stand up, new member. I appreciate that beat, Chris. And Chris, I'm going to get to you in 1 second. I think Kafka brings up, I'm sorry, Benton, the writer of that article, brings up a good point when he talks about how the a major reason why the Giants wouldn't want to lose Kafka, essentially, paraphrasing a bit, would be embarrassment. The fact that you would lose all three of your coordinators in one season. There's already been negative press on Dable with his coaching staff. Who's more at fault? We don't know. Wink, we're not in the building, whether it be Wink or Dable. But regardless, it wouldn't look good on him if he lost another member of his coaching staff that left for a lateral move. Had Kafka left for a head coaching job, that's another discussion. From Kafka's perspective, outside of the obvious, as was reported in that article, that there was friction supposedly throughout the course of the year where Dable took over play calling duties. I even remember reading in, I think it was Pat Leonard's article, which you know how I feel about Pat Leonard if you watch my channel, but I'm sure there's some legitimacy to it. And if that was true about giving Shea Tierney some of the play calling responsibilities, obviously Kafka probably didn't look too fondly at that either. So from that standpoint, that's obvious. But the other thing I thought about from Kafka's perspective, why would it be more attractive for a lateral move to go to Seattle? And why would the Giants block him, knowing that he may view it as a more attractive move? Other than the personnel as well. Like you could certainly argue they have better wide receivers, may do a better job. He also doesn't run the risk of not getting the credit he may deserve. And when I say that, who's the head coach for the New York Giants? He's a former offensive play caller. So you look at what happened to Bieniemy when he was with the Kansas City Chiefs. He had to get out of Kansas City to potentially get what he felt was an opportunity to become a head coach because he was always in Andy Reid's shadow. Dable didn't have to worry about that. His head coach, McDermott, was a former defensive coordinator. So Kafka could look at it that way as well, where he may say to himself, well, even if the offense does well, everybody's just going to give Dable the credit. And I may want to get out of here because this gives me a better opportunity at advancement. But regardless, Kafka's going to be back. I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much in terms of what it may mean in terms of the draft, so I won't even say it. But I was always of the belief that if the Giants were going to draft a quarterback early in this year's draft, Dable would take over play calling responsibilities. But that's just a guess on my part. If they were to retain Kafka, which it appears they will, and Kafka retains play calling duties, I don't know, at least slightly maybe. I think it lends itself more towards that they won't be taking a quarterback in the first round, but that's far from a lock. Chris says, I'd be happy with Brendan Daly. His linebackers played well against Lamar. Daly, being a linebackers coach, could continue to get the most out of Bobby O. I just want a defensive coordinator at this point. I just want a defensive coordinator at this point, if I'm being honest. Like, I just want to know the direction of this team. I want to know that this team has a set plan, that they're organizing for the draft, that they're organizing for the offseason, and they're ready to go. I don't know which one of these guys is going to work out and which one isn't. I have no idea. I'd be lying to you if I said otherwise. If we hired a guy like Vic Fangio, I would say, yeah, that's a guy that has a lot of history as a DC. Obviously, did a great job with the San Francisco 49ers. Unfortunately, the Eagles hired him. But whoever they hire, it's going to be an unknown. None of these guys have been to DC before. We've seen it multiple times as Giants fans. Just because you're a good coordinator doesn't mean you're a good head coach. Just because you're a good positional coach doesn't mean you're a good coordinator, right? Pat Shurmur, really good offensive coordinator, at least before he became the Giants head coach, wasn't a good head coach. And Ben McAdoo, you could go down the list. So, we'll see what we get when we get it. But I just want them to get a defensive coordinator. I want them to get somebody they feel comfortable working with so this team can get back on the right path going into next year. Chris B says, Dable seems like a clown to work for. See, these are the takes you're going to get. I don't view it that way. And I know, listen, Wink and his posse went behind Dable's back. So they said that was being reported 8, 9, 10 weeks ago. So I'm sorry, 8, 9, 10 weeks into the season. That happens. There's friction from within a coaching staff. We didn't hear about it Dable's first year because the team was winning. When the team's losing, stuff like that comes out. It is what it is. Does Dable need to learn? I'm sure he needs to grow. He's still a young head coach. He's only been in the league for 2 years. Tom Coughlin had to learn. Tom Coughlin fought with the players constantly his first 2-3 years as the Giants head coach, and that was after being a Jacksonville Jaguar head coach for, 7, 8 years? They went to multiple AFC title games. He still needed to grow as a head coach. Dable needs to also. I think he will. I'm not going to go crazy about that. I think Kafka has just as much of a reason to want to leave the Giants for some of the other reasons that I expressed. And I think he probably fears that Dable may take over as the play caller at some point this year if the team starts to struggle. He may want to have more security in knowing that he's going to be the play caller for the entirety of the year. The fact that he gets to take over for a job where he knows the head coach is going to be safe for the next 2, if not 3 years after that, which gives him more of an opportunity. I don't think it's all Dable and coaching under Dable. I think there's more to it than that when it comes to Kafka. Let's see. What's up? What's up, Fico? He says he's right. Dable really pissed off the whole staff. I mean, when the team loses, people are going to be pissed off. Sherrod says Wink burnt bridges with the Ravens and Giants, but somehow Dable's the bad guy. It is what it is, man. People are going to take the side that they want to take to fit what their opinion is. They didn't get along. Bottom line. And it's Dable's job as a head coach to hire somebody that he could get along with. Whether that, whoever that may be. He's got to find a defensive coordinator that he could get along with, that he could work with. Clearly, Wink was not that guy. It is what it is. What's up, Young Hendricks, man? Thanks for popping in the stream, man. Da says, do you see Calvin Ridley as a potential target of free agency if we try to get a wide receiver? I mean, I think there's several potential targets in free agency if we want to go wide receiver. As I said in my cap video, I think we're going to have more cap money than some people may think. I just am not of the belief that they should spend a big bulk of that cap money on the wide receiver position. Because if it was me, and a lot of people in this chat may not want to hear this because they want to go quarterback no matter what with that first pick. But if it was me in a rich wide receiver draft class, which this certainly is at the top, and it's a deep class in general, I would rather use my draft assets to get a young wide receiver to be the future number one for this football team rather than spend 18, 20, 22 million, whatever the going rate would be for a guy like a Michael Pittman or somebody else. I think we have plenty of good complementary wide receivers. And if you believe strongly in a guy like Neighbors where we're picking, I think it makes a lot more sense to spend our free agency money elsewhere than to spend $20 million a year on a wide receiver. That's just my outlook on the situation. Could they? Yeah, absolutely they could. There's a number of wide receivers they could look into, but I think we've got good young wide receivers. We need a great one. And I think you can get that with our 6th pick in this year's draft. Let's see. Still just one O-line. Fat, we all love the O-line. Ethan says, are the Giants under pressure to get coordinators in place before free agency? Well, they will. There's no way. I have to think the DC position, if they're going to hire Daly, that'll be sewed up probably within days after the Super Bowl. I think the Super Bowl, well, yeah, it is. It's February 11th. It's a week from today. So I think that probably within 2, 3, 4 days of the conclusion of the Super Bowl, if that's the route they're going, he'll be announced as the defensive coordinator. There's no way this drags into March. They'll have it done long before that. As I said earlier in the stream, February 11th when we hired Wink. So this isn't that abnormal. It was kind of a similar process 2 years ago. So, yeah, I think within a week, maybe a little bit more than a week, you should know who your defensive coordinator is going to be. It's not going to go into March. Let's see. You got it, Bluegrass, man. Thanks for being here, man. And Xavier says they do have a lot of young wide receivers already. Just need a number one. Yeah, and I think you could draft that number one. I think Malik Neighbors potentially staring you in the face. You could draft that number one. You don't need to spend $20 million a year. I would use our free agency money elsewhere. I've said it now numerous times. Edge rusher. I think that's clear as a clear possibility. There's a lot of good edges in this free agency class when you look at it. Cornerback's a possibility as well. Obviously, offensive line. I think they could do it both ways, both in the draft and free agency at that position. I would prioritize wide receiver in the draft. Not only is it a top-heavy wide receiver class, it's a deep wide receiver class. There's talented wide receivers throughout this draft. I think Daniel Jeremiah came out with his list. I forgot what it was. I want to say like 10 or 12 of his top 50 were wide receivers. So you could get talent at that position in this year's draft. I wouldn't spend it in free agency. Let's see. Are you willing to trade up for Marvin Harrison? No, I don't think that opportunity will be there. So no. Marvin Harrison ain't getting past pick number 4. And call me crazy, man. I think the first 3 picks are going to be quarterbacks. And I don't think any of those teams are trading down. And I think the 4th pick is going to be Marvin Harrison. That's the way I see it right now. Would I trade up for Harrison? Sure. If the deal was reasonable. I think he's incredible, but I don't see it happening. I think Arizona's going to snatch him at 4. Let's see. I'll say when you have conflict within the coaching staff during an awful season, no head coach will come out looking good no matter what you do. That said, Dable's in thin ice this year. I agree with that. I agree with that. Um, Listen, I said when Dable and Shane took the job, I want them to get 4 years. Shane's going to get 4 years. Let's be real here. Shane's going to get 4 years. At least. Gettleman got 4 years. That doesn't mean that Dable's guaranteed 4 years. We've seen our last 3 head coaches been fired after 2 years. And if you're Joe Shane, how do you save your job after next year if the team bombs? How do you save your job? You already fired the defensive coordinator, and there's been reports that he didn't get along with the defensive coordinator. Okay. Where do you turn next? You can't turn to Mara and the fans and say, well, it was the DC again, or well, it was the offensive line coach again, or well, it was injuries again. No, if the team wins 4 or 5 games next year, Dable's probably going to lose his job. That's the reality of the situation. As much as I don't want to see that happen, and as much as I don't think that will happen. I don't think we're going to win 4 or 5 games next year. But if that were to happen, yeah, I think Dable would be fired, or at least would be a very high probability he could be fired. That's how Joe Shane saves his job. So, yeah, I that's a distinct possibility next year. I'm not gonna downplay that. I'm not gonna say that that's not a possibility. I think it definitely is. I think the team needs to play better next year. Dable could be out of here real fast. I don't care that he won Coach of the Year his first year. That's the nature of the NFL. All you got to do is look at Mike Vrabel. So, nobody saw that coming 2 years ago. He had 2 bad years. He's gone. I disagree with that. I don't think if one goes, both goes. I'm not saying that could happen, but I don't agree with that. I think Shane could certainly retain his job if Dable goes. I could certainly see that being the case. Let's see. Swin says, what quarterback do you want us going after in free agency or in the draft, and how many wins for Dable to secure another year? I mean, I don't want to put a number on it, but we can't win 4 games. I don't think we need to make the playoffs, but we got to be somewhat competitive and relevant. So I think it's just more so an overall feeling at the end of the year. You know, how you feel about the team in terms of are they growing throughout the course of the year, so on and so forth. But the team can't severely disappoint next year. Otherwise, he could be in jeopardy. As far as a quarterback in free agency, listen, I think the only way you spend big bucks in free agency on a backup quarterback is if you're not drafting a quarterback early in this year's draft, which I think is entirely possible. I've come around to that fact that that's at least a moderately probable, at least in my opinion, possibility. And if that's the case, I think you're looking at Gardner Minshew. I think you're looking at Tannehill, Flacco. I think all those guys are suitable backups. Guys that, if Jones isn't ready to go at the start of the season, could step in. They won't lose. Tyrod Taylor, throw him in there as well. Of course, familiar with the offense. Certainly a possibility. Guys that could step in and not lose your football games, not embarrass your football team, give your team a chance to win. And if Jones is not playing well, can replace him. So I don't think Jones, if we're not drafting a quarterback this year, I don't think Jones is getting the red carpet thrown out either. Like, he'll get his opportunity to play, but if he's not playing well for 3-4 games, they'll make a change, especially if they spend pretty high on a backup. So, yeah, I think it's important, especially if we're not drafting a quarterback early in this year's draft, to bring in a very competent backup. The name that pops up for me in my head is Minshew, but I don't know what his market would be. He had a good year this year with the Colts. And the Colts may very well want to retain him, especially with a young quarterback in Anthony Richardson and the injury problems he suffered in his first year. Let's see. Israel says, if the new O-line coach gets the most out of the line, that will help immensely because there is some depth there. Let Barkley walk, tag X, draft court. Listen, if the Giants, what's going on, man? If the Giants get the offensive line right, it's going to help everything. It's going to help everything. It's going to help the quarterback. It's going to help the wide receivers. It's going to help the play caller. It's going to help the defense. Okay? That's just facts. So hopefully, the new offensive line coach we brought in does a good job. We'll see. He did a good job with the Raiders the 2 years that he was here, but I've had hope before, and my hope's been crushed. So I'm not going to jump the gun before we start to see some results, but hopefully he does a good job. Chris B says, Jones stinks. Better get a quarterback or the season's screwed. Well, I think we're going to add a quarterback. I just don't know if it's going to be early in the draft or if it's going to be a free agent. But I think he's not going to force quarterback pick. No matter how much everybody in this chat or people that want to go quarterback no matter what want it, he's not forcing a quarterback pick. Not going to take a quarterback back at 6 if he doesn't feel he's worth taking there. But I think he will address the quarterback in some way, shape, or form. He said that in every press conference. Doesn't mean he's taking one at 6. Let's see. What if we draft Spencer Rattler in the late round? How would you feel? I mean, I'm fine with that. Clearly wouldn't expect him. Clearly wouldn't expect him to start, being that he'd probably be a late day 2, early day 3 pick. But I'm fine with that. If you like him and you view him as a project, and worst case, if he's a 3rd or 4th round pick, worst case scenario, he doesn't turn out to be a starter. He's a backup, whatever. That's okay. You could draft a backup with a 3rd or 4th round pick. Very little financial commitment there. If you like him, you think that he's somebody that you could build with, sure. I'm fine with that. I expect the Giants to make a pick like that if they're not taking an early quarterback. Late day 2, early day 3. I could certainly see that. I'd almost expect it if we're not taking a quarterback in the 1st round. Let's see. Rattler's not a starter, Rob. I agree. That's why he's a day 3 pick. Daniel Jones robbed the Giants of $160 million. Oh, God. Chris B. And how are you Cowboys doing? How you Cowboys doing? You haven't won a Super Bowl since DVDs came out. You guys lost in the 1st round of the playoffs this year. And yeah, Dak's a better quarterback, but what has he won you guys? He won you stats this year. What did he do in the playoffs? You want to badmouth the Giants? Go right ahead. Your Cowboys have accomplished nothing since 1995. You want to celebrate division titles? Go right ahead. Go right ahead. We don't celebrate division titles here. We celebrate Super Bowls. I know Cowboys fans have forgotten what it feels like to play in one of those. It's been a long time for you guys. What's up, Brandon, man? Thanks for popping in. Chris, I'm making cannolis. I'm sending you some. I appreciate it, man. Calling them out for what, Danny Duds? I don't want to force a quarterback at 6. It has nothing to do with what I feel about the Giants. I don't want to take the 4th quarterback with the 6th pick. I think it would be moronic, to be honest with you, unless they felt like he was elite. If they do, I'm all aboard. I just don't think I don't think they're going to take the 4th quarterback with the 6th pick. I just don't see it. Do I think that they will look to potentially trade up? Yeah, but I don't think those teams are going to be willing to trade down. Can I do the play-by-play for the Pro Bowl? No, it's not worth it. What's up, Sierra? Thanks for popping in. What's my number one in free agency? Edge. That's my number one. What do you think about the SNY article about Neal being moved inside? That was pure speculation. I saw people reporting on that as if it was fact. That was pure speculation on Connor Hughes' part. At least that's the way that I read it. I'm not ruling it out as a possibility. I'm still going into next year with the expectation that Neal's going to play right tackle, even though it may not be what I want. I think I would rather him play at the guard, to be honest with you. Left guard next to Andrew Thomas. But Shane has basically all but come out and said that he expects him to play right tackle. Rob, the answer's simple. You may not agree with me. That's fine. The answer's simple. Why you don't take a quarterback with the 4th pick if you feel like he doesn't warrant the pick. First off, I am never a believer in taking a quarterback just to take a quarterback. Even if you feel he's better than Daniel Jones, especially a pick that high. You don't invest that much into a quarterback unless you feel like he has the capability of being an elite quarterback. That's how you end up with Daniel Jones. That's my belief. I'm not going to just take a quarterback because, oh, yeah, he's better than Daniel. Is he worth the pick? Period. There's plenty of players in this draft that are better than players at positions on our team in this draft at certain positions, but do they warrant the pick? Azeez Ojulari can't stay healthy, but is there an edge that warrants the 6th pick? Just because a quarterback you may feel may be better than Daniel Jones does not mean that they warrant the 6th pick. You overdraft the quarterback, you see what happens. Chris B says, you can't take the 4th best quarterback at 6. That's what I basically just said in so many words. Let's see, and thank you, Chris. Gunjo says, how important is it to you that McKinney is back here? I mean, I like McKinney. I said that as the year went along. I like McKinney. But I understand if they don't bring him back. I mean, he is signed on with a super agent. The market for the the safety position has skyrocketed in recent years. I think the franchise tag is like $16.5 million. So if you're Xavier McKinney, that's where you start. Like that's your base in terms of per your average salary if it's not going to be a franchise tag. And you're clearly not going to tag him. You don't want to commit 16.2, I think it's 16.25 to this year's cap for the safety position. You're not going to do that. So if he's asking for $17-18 million a year, that's a tough decision for Joe Schoen at the safety position. That's a very tough decision. I would like him back, but if his market is there, which is, I think some safeties make like $20 million a year. That's probably what he's going to be asking for. If a team's willing to give that to him, I would let him go. I wouldn't give him $19-20 million a year. So it depends on his market, but I wouldn't give him that. Let's see. Giant says Shane trades to trade for Mahomes or Allen in order to save his job. Why would those teams trade those players? Why would teams trade those players? Chris B says, all love, Chris. Just be. I know. I'm just BSing too. I'm just having fun with you. I know. You're in my streams all the time. Bill says, I have no control over any of this. So I'm just along for the ride and hoping smarter people make good calls on personnel. I'll still be a fan of the job. Well, it's basically all you can do. And in the reality of things, you don't have control over it. And that's basically the way I am. I realize I don't have control of it, and I try to make sense of why they make the decisions that they make, even though at times I may not always agree with it. We don't control things. Joe Schoen does, and you have to hope that Joe Schoen is making the right decisions. Elijah says, Chris, it looks like the Commanders are going to trade up to 1 to get Caleb. If that happens, a quarterback is dropping. Would you be? Of course, I'd be open to May at 6. Yes, but I'm not buying it, Elijah. I'm not buying it. Where are you hearing these rumors that the Bears want to trade down from 1? I'm not buying it. And maybe I'll be shocked on draft night or before draft night if a trade goes down. I'm not buying it. If I'm Ryan Poles, there's no way I'm not taking Caleb Williams or Drake May or whatever quarterback I feel is the guy there. I have the opportunity to reset the rookie clock. Last year I passed up on CJ Stroud. I'm not doing it. I'm taking a quarterback there. I do not believe the Bears are trading out of that pick. Chris says, what do you think of going back to a 4-3 defense? What do I think about going back to a 4-3 defense? I'm open to whatever the coach feels is the right decision to make. But I especially in today's NFL, most defenses are not cemented as a 3-4 or a 4-3. Obviously, Winks is a little bit more exotic than others, where a lot of times he only has like 2 defensive linemen. He's got more DBs out there than a lot of other defenses. But whoever's the DC is going to take over, I wouldn't expect them to run just a base 4-3 or a base 3-4. I would expect them to have multiple formations that they could run out there, have more versatile players. So that's just the modern day NFL. It's very rare that you see a team run exclusively a 4-3. I would expect it to be a little bit of a hybrid. That's what most defenses are in today's game. You need speed, especially depending on the opponent. You want to have more DBs out there, week to week. Will says, I think fans just want to see a fresh face at quarterback. Well, I know they do, and I understand it. I want to see a fresh face at quarterback. I do. I don't want to keep talking about Daniel Jones. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. But I'm also giving you guys my honest opinion as to what I think may very well transpire this year based off of where we're picking. I don't want to talk about Daniel Jones anymore. I'm sick of fighting. I want the fan base to be happy with the quarterback for 1 year before they want to execute him. I'd like 1 year off from debating the quarterback position. And then in a year after that, when he probably struggles early on, they'll want to execute him too. But I'm done with debating it. But I also realize the situation we're in. There's a distinct possibility we're not going to take a quarterback in the first round. I would say more likely than not. Let's see. Tana, the rumors are because Kingsbury Williams quarterback coach is supposed to. Yeah, I'm not buying into that. I'm not buying into those rumors. I think they stay where they are. But hey, I could be very much wrong about that. Xavier says, I don't think Dable is the problem. This is just a bad team that can't block with no quarterback. I mean, we'll find out. I like Dable. I'm still backing Dable, so I'm not blaming him yet. I would like to see him get at least 2 more years, but we'll see. Let's see. For any quarterback drafted, the situation will be 75% whether he succeeds or doesn't. That's usually the case. Now, of course, certain quarterbacks are obviously better than others and could look better than others in said situation. But yes, generally speaking, it's a team sport. The better surrounding cast, the better the quarterback's going to look. Do I hate Daniel Jones? I do not hate Daniel Jones. No, do not hate Daniel Jones. I mean, Rob, that's what's fun about draft season. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine. Bad Dog would agree with you. I don't think Michael Penix is worth the first round pick, let alone the 6th overall pick. That's my opinion. I don't think he's worth the first round pick. I wouldn't take him with one of the first 32 picks in the draft. It's my honest opinion. Let's see. Jake says, if they didn't take a quarterback, would you rather trade down? It depends on what the package was. Is it worth, for me to trade down, if I'm Shane, I have to be getting a future first round pick. And if I'm going to drop that far, you're talking dropping from like 6 to maybe 12 or 13 before that even becomes a possibility. Because if you're dropping from 6 to 8 or 6 to 9, you're not getting a first round pick for that. More than likely. So if I'm only getting like a second round pick, if I drop from 6 to 9 and I really like a player at 6, I'd rather just stay there and take my player at 6. Will J says, I personally feel like if Dable and Joe are tied to Jones, their job could be on the line. If he stays at quarterback moving forward, Jones isn't good enough. I don't know if it's the good mic or not, but I definitely foresee a scenario where Shane will get the opportunity to draft this quarterback if they have to stick with Daniel Jones this year. I think when they signed Daniel Jones, they viewed it as a 2-year stopgap where they were hoping that he could turn into more than that. And I think that if they don't take a quarterback in the first round of this year's draft, they're more than likely going to stick with that. But I don't necessarily think that means Shane's going to lose his job. I think Shane will ultimately get to take his quarterback at some point. But hey, may not be the case. But I think he will. I think he will at some point get an opportunity to take his quarterback. And let's see. Peter, what's going on, man? He says, I think the Giants should do what it takes to move up for a quarterback. What if I agree? You're not getting an argument from me on that, Pete. I'm in agreement with everybody in the chat when it comes to that. Not all Giants fans agree with that. I do. I agree with that. I think the Giants should do everything in their power within reason. You're not going to give up unfair value, but within reason, if they love a quarterback, which I assume they will at the top of this draft, to go up and get said quarterback. Where some of us may disagree, I don't think they're going to have that opportunity. I just don't. I hope I'm wrong. I'm done talking about Daniel Jones. I would love to be able to go in next year excited about Drake May or Caleb Williams. Don't think it's going to happen. I think those 3 teams need quarterbacks, and I think they're going to stay there and they're going to take them. You can't force a team to trade out if they don't want to. But we're in agreement. I think if a trade's there, the Giants should make it. Let's see. Why are you down on Penix? I don't even want to use the term down. I just don't view him as even a mid first round pick, maybe a very late day 1 pick. Definitely not 6th. I mean, there's several reasons. 1, he's older. 2, he has an injury history. The dude was 24 years old. 4 out of his 5 years of college, he didn't finish the season. He had more mobility while he played at Indiana, but due to the injuries, he's not quite as mobile as he used to be. I personally, and I do think he has a good arm, I personally don't see the same upside with Penix as a lot of other quarterbacks in this year's draft class. That's my opinion on it. Let's see. Do you think the Giants should consider trading for the first overall pick and draft Caleb? Yes. I just don't think the opportunity is going to be there. G-Man says the Giants interviewed Vikings DB coach Durante Jones for their defensive coordinator jumpers. Oh, did that just come out, G-Man? That's new. If it did that just come out? Thomas, what's going on, man? He says, if we can't, don't trade up to get a quarterback. What position do you think we would take? And what position do you want us to take? So if we don't trade up and we stay at 6 is what you're saying. I think it's going to be a wide receiver. It's either going to be a wide receiver. It's either going to be, so it just came out. Okay. Maybe we'll hire him. It's either going to be a wide receiver or an offensive lineman if we don't go quarterback. And I think if we're going to go quarterback, we're going to trade up to do it. But I'm leaning heavily that I think it's going to be wide receiver. I wouldn't be upset if we took Joe Alt, though, as much as many people in this chat would be. I wouldn't be upset. And Bill, man, thank you very much, man. Says, just because you're worth it, I appreciate it. Thank you for being here, man. Always in here, supporting the channel, support me on Twitter. But I wouldn't be upset with tackle. Let me get that. Let's take quarterback out of it, because I know obviously that's where a lot of fans' heads are at. You don't have the option to take a quarterback. We're not taking a quarterback at 6. Joe Shane comes to the realization there is not a quarterback worthy of that pick. We don't have the option to trade up. What do you want with the pick at 6? Do you want Malik Neighbors? Do you want Bowers? Do you want a Dunze? Do you want a tackle? What do you want? I get the feeling most Giant fans want the wide receiver. I'd be completely open to both, but I think the Giants would go wide receiver. Wide receiver, a Dunze, okay. Penix. Well, that's a quarterback. Neighbors. Neighbors or Jaden Daniels are the only picks at 6. Joe Alt. Derek says Neighbors, a Dunze or Alt, trade back. Brock Bowers, O lineman. Yeah. I'd rather Young says I'd rather die than take a tackle top 10. Well, I hope you don't die. And Peter says, if we don't draft the quarterback round 1, then I can't fathom taking a wide receiver the way every mock claims. You absolutely have to take a line then. So you're of the mindset if you don't go quarterback, you take Joe Alt, you move Evan Neal to the guard, and you keep building your foundation that way. I'm okay with that. I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I'd be completely fine with that if they went with the lineman at the 6th pick. I just don't get the impression that that's what Shane is going to do based on what he said in his pressers, but it could be draft talk. I'd be fine with that if they elected to go that route. Let's see. Natalie says tackle and 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round offensive line. Natalie's like, just keep throwing darts until. Natalie's like, we never could pick offensive linemen right no matter what. So let's just make every pick we have until we get it right. So Natalie's like, let's just use all 7 picks for every draft for the remainder of time until we get this offensive line right. I don't blame you for feeling that way, Natalie, because it's been a disaster for well over 10 years. So, I look at the Lions and I get jealous to see what they're able to do with their offensive line. Max says, I can't do anymore. I'd rather take a proven commodity at the line and take Neighbors if he's there. And Miguel says, if we pick Alt, let's put him at left guard. No, if we take Alt, you're moving Neal to guard. You're putting Alt at the tackle. Neal's been awful since he's been in the pros. What do you have, a 41 PFF grade this year? He was in the 30s the year before that. He gets no break off the line. I think if you do that, you're moving Neal to the guard. You're not putting Alt at the guard. W.O. Grove says, draft rule number 1, fill a primary need equals Joe Alt. I can't disagree that it's a primary need, especially the way that Evan Neal has played. I think wide receiver is a primary need too. I think both of those are primary needs. I'd be okay either way. And I think it's going to be one or the other. I think it's going to be a tackle wide receiver, but I'm leaning more towards that it'll be the wide receiver. Let's see. You want a proven commodity on the line? So you're saying sign a proven tackle or a proven guard and go out there and take the wide receiver. Yeah, I mean, free agency is going to give us a lot of answers. Jam Band says, I always wonder if we can't draft O-line or just can't develop them. Thomas is probably just impossible to screw up with bad coaching. I think it's a combination of both. I think fans that, and rightfully so, we're firing the offensive line coach. But I think fans that think that just by replacing him, everything's going to look dandy, they're fooling themselves. We still need an upgrade on the offensive line. I think it's a combination of both. But more so than anything on the offensive line, I think it's continuity. These guys have to play with one another. You have to have the same coach coaching these guys so that they don't have a different ear in their voice, but you got to get the coach right. So hopefully we do that this offseason, but I think it's a combination of both. I think they needed an upgrade for the offensive line coach, and we need an upgrade in terms of talent on the line. Do I think we cut? Yeah, I think that's the most obvious cut on the roster. Glowinski's going to get cut. I think we'll cut Boogie Basham. That'll save about 1.4. There's at least like one or two other small cuts. I don't think we'll cut Slayton. I think we'll look to extend Slayton, if I had to guess. Peter says, what in the hell does Neighbors or Dunze add to this team with a bum quarterback throwing to him in the worst offensive line in the league? More joke status in the NFL for our Giants. I get it, Pete, because every time I see people share your sentiment on Twitter, whenever that is talked about as a topic, like the people that are anti-wide receiver and are all about drafting the quarterback. And I get it. You're right in the sense that if you don't have a good quarterback, wide receivers aren't going to mean a whole lot. And if you don't have at least an adequate offensive line, wide receivers aren't going to mean a whole lot. I don't disagree with that. We had one of the best wide receivers in the NFL in Odell Beckham, maybe the best at the time. We didn't win a lot of football games because we couldn't block to save our lives. So I get that. But the draft isn't just about next year. It's not just about next year. If you're taking Malik Neighbors in 2024, who's 21 years old, you're not, or I think he is anyway, you're not drafting him to say, well, he's only ever going to play with Daniel Jones. You're drafting him for the next 5, 6, 7 years. You're drafting him to help the quarterback position in general at one of the more important positions on a roster. So if you feel he's the best player at one of the 4 or 5 most important positions in the sport, and you think he's by far the best player on your board, you take him. It's not just about 2024. So that's my answer to you. Let's see. Chris Hoffman says, I think we go wide receiver at 6 and guard in the second with either edge or cornerback. I have no idea. I have no idea after that. I think you're going to go you're going to try to match BPA with need, but obviously we will all have a better idea after free agency. But I think just based off the strength of the draft, if we're not going quarterback, I think wide receiver is the favorite right now with our pick if we don't trade down. Second round right now, if you told me, Chris, we're not going to address it too much in free agency, I would tell you line. I would, with one of those two picks, I would think line, whether it be guard or whether it be tackle, whatever the plan may be. That's where I'd be leaning, but let's see what happens in March 1st. Sorry, I was muted that whole time. I switched to the bad mic, so that doesn't happen again. Do you think he really fell in love with Tommy DeVito? I don't think he fell in love with Tommy DeVito. I think he played DeVito out of necessity, being that Tyrod Taylor was hurt at the time. He got 2 starts or 3 starts, I think, before the possibility of, maybe it was 2, before the possibility of Taylor coming back became a possibility, and they were on a winning streak, so he left him in. But I don't think he ever loved Tommy DeVito. We love the story as Giants fans because it gave us a reason to tune in. But I don't think Dable ever viewed Tommy DeVito as even a long-term backup, if we're being honest. But it was a fun story while it lasted. Maybe he grows into a potential backup, but I don't think he views him as a long-term starter for this football team. Let's see. There's so much great linemen in day 2. I think we're going to attack line, whether it be day 1 or day 2. And Terry says, why? You look better than our starter. I can't deny that. I can't deny that. He didn't look very good towards the end, though, when they put Tyrod Taylor in. I don't know. Proof will be in the pudding. We'll see what we do this offseason. But I don't think the Giants view DeVito as a long-term piece of this football team. Let's see. Wouldn't mind Mitchell if we trade down because we don't get quarterback. Deep. Let's see. Talk about what you think of the moves regarding the coaches within the division. Um, I I'm not too concerned. I'm not going to say he won't be a good coach. He could be, but I'm not too concerned with Dan Quinn taking over as the Commanders head coach. I would have been much more, I guess, frightened or on guard if they would have hired an offensive minded head coach. Dan Quinn did a really good job as the DC for the Dallas Cowboys. So in that sense, that's actually a good thing for us. They lose their defensive coordinator, who obviously Micah Parsons had a lot to do with the, how much better that defense got, but Quinn also did too, with the aggressive nature that he brought to that Dallas Cowboys defense. So I think the Quinn move is a good thing for us. I think it makes the Dallas defense a lot weaker or potentially a lot weaker. And I don't know, he's an okay head coach, I suppose. He did a pretty good job with the Falcons before they fired him. But it's not a move that I'm going to be like bent out of shape about. So yeah, I think that's a good thing. I'm happy that Dallas decided to keep McCarthy. I think McCarthy's a pretty good coach, but the idea that they may have had an opportunity to get a guy like Harbaugh, for example, would have scared me a lot more. So I'm happy they kept McCarthy. The Eagles obviously decided to stick with their head coach, but I'm not surprised by that, being that they went to the Super Bowl just last year. Matt says, who would you rather have coach? And they're going to have a new offensive play caller. We'll see. He was pretty good with Dallas. Didn't do too good of a job with the Chargers last year, but another system for Jalen Hurts to have to learn. Matt says, who would you rather have coaching a division rival? Joe Judge, Jason Garrett, or Kafka? Oh, wow. That's tough. I don't hate Kafka, actually, Matt, but obviously there's no evidence of what he would be as a head coach. That's a good question for the chat. I think I would go Judge. I mean, Judge. I mean, here's the thing with Judge. I still think Judge could become a good head coach. He was still young, may not have been prepared for the job, but he's got a lot more learning to do. Garrett is, even though he was not a very good head coach, had some success at the NFL level as a head coach. So, based off what I've seen up to this point in time, out of those three, I would probably pick Garrett. I'm sorry, Judge. Pete says, I agree. We're not picking anyone to save the whole team in one draft. But my answer to you is that O linemen have longer shelf lives than wide receivers. Quarterback could give you 15 years. O lineman could give you 10. Wide receivers, what? I don't know about that. I would say 10, a good wide receiver. 20, 31, 32, they could play at a high level. Once they start to reach that, yeah, they start to, historically speaking, at least, they start to bottom out. They're no longer number one wide receivers more often than not. Running backs, it's more so 28, 29. But yeah, I mean, offensive linemen probably a little bit more on average, at least in terms of getting more out of their careers. But you got to take the best player too at the most important position on your board. Chris says, I think the Giants should target the free agent guard. Yeah, I like him too. A lot of people have penciled him as a potential target, even though we have not had a ton of success when it comes to free agent offensive linemen, particularly from that organization. Nate Solder didn't really work out very well, right? But yeah, the thing I like about him, by all accounts, is he's got versatility. He's capable of playing both tackle and guard, something that would be very valuable to our offensive line, being that we're questionable on both spots. It would give you the opportunity, if Evan Neal wasn't doing well, to kick him out to the tackle, start him at the guard. If your plan was to start Neal at right tackle to start the year. So yeah, he could make sense. That could be a good fit for the Giants. And he's one of the 4 or 5 most sought after free agents on the free agent market at the tackle position, at least from the few lists that I've seen. So could be a fit for the Giants. I don't know what his market's going to be. Let's see. Can you believe we still haven't gotten a defensive coordinator? Is Dable's attitude keeping coaches away? I'm not buying into that. I'm really not, man. I think that they're just taking their time at this point, and they want to hire because who are they competing against at this point? There's nobody else looking for defensive coordinators outside of the Cowboys. So I think they're going to wait probably till after the Super Bowl, and I expect them to hire the Chiefs guy. That's what I think is going to happen. Seti says, do you think John Mara is a hoarder? I don't think John Mara is perfect. I'll say that. I don't think he's perfect. I'd like to think he's given this regime more say than the regimes in the past. There's no way that any of us will know that. That's pure speculation on my part and your part if you disagree with me. Um, but yeah, I don't think he's been perfect. I think he definitely has had too much hands on with the organization at certain times. Raphael says, with everyone healthy, are the Knicks finals bound? No, as much as I want to say yes. I want to say yes with every fiber of my being, but no. Now, if they make a trade and they add another player, I may feel differently. I'm not going to get bent out of shape off of last night's loss. You were missing OG Anunoby. You were missing Julius Randle. And you saw what the Lakers did. They double teamed Jalen Brunson every time he got over center court, 35 feet away from the basket. When you have Randle on the floor, not as easy to do that. So I don't think that's the real Knicks that you saw last night. I think they went up against a very good defensive team, especially with the way that Anthony Davis was playing, and they took advantage of it. But no, I don't think we're a finals team. I think we need another piece. Spag, do you think he's coming back? Yes, I think he'll be back with the Chiefs. I see no right. Oh, you mean to the Giants? No, I wish he would, but no, I don't think so. I think he'll be back with the Chiefs. If he doesn't get ahead, well, obviously he's not going to get a head coaching opportunity. Those have been filled. Let's see. Terry says, if Kafka want to go, why are we blocking him from leaving? I wonder what he's got. Yeah, I talked about that earlier, Terry. Obviously, you probably weren't in at the beginning of the stream. I think the main reason why we're blocking him from leaving, if I'm being honest, is to avoid embarrassment. That's a big part of it, probably because we lost our DC, we lost our special teams coordinator, and it obviously wouldn't have been an embarrassment if we lost Kafka if he got a head coaching job, because that's a step up for him. But if he left us for a lateral move, could you imagine the publicity, the bad press that Dable and Shane would be getting? So that's why they put a block on it, in my opinion, more so than anything else. Zach says, good to see you. Big year for the Giants coming up. What's going on, Zach, man? Thanks for popping in. Let's see. Xavier says, O-line should be number one priority. It's been 10 years of losing seasons. I mean, I say that every offseason. We still haven't been able to fix it, but I don't disagree with you. Kevin says, let me know what you think about this. Giants should select Rattler at 6. What do I think about that, Kevin? What I think about that, Kevin, is I hope you never, and no disrespect to you. I'm very happy you're in my chat. I'm very happy you're a Giants fan. But I hope you never apply to become the general manager for the New York Giants. That's my opinion on that. I know people have been talking up Spencer Rattler the last couple of days. He had a good Senior Bowl, I guess. He won the MVP. I'd be fine with him as a day 3 pick, whatever. No, I hope you never apply to become the general manager for the New York Giants. No disrespect, man. Let's see. Zach says, nah, no need if he's a projected 3rd rounder. What are you talking about? Oh, you talking about Rattler? Yeah. Renell says, we fixed the O-line of free agency. No more high draft picks on the O-line. I'm cool with that, Renell. I'm completely fine with that. But the problem, Renell, we've tried that too. We've tried both ways. We spent high draft picks, like you said. We spent the 4th pick on Andrew Thomas, the 7th pick on Evan Neal, mid-second round pick on John Michael Smith. We spent a early second round pick on Will Hernandez. We spent so many other draft picks on linemen, Eric Flowers, and they haven't worked out. But we've tried both. We signed Jeff Schwartz to a big contract about 8-9 years ago in free agency. We signed Nate Solder to a big contract. We signed Kevin Zeitler to a pretty big contract. So we've tried both, and neither's been successful. So I think you need to continue to attack both in free agency and the draft on the offensive line. I'm not necessarily saying that you got to use a 1st-round pick on it, but you need to continue to draft offensive linemen. Patrick says cut Waller and draft Bowers. I wouldn't. I would keep Waller around for another year before I cut him. What's the leash for Shane? Surely longer than Dable, right? I think it is. Yeah, I think he's got. I would be surprised if Shane's fired after next year under almost any circumstance. I wouldn't be surprised if Dable was. Not that I'm expecting it, but if the team was really bad, I think it's much more likely Dable would be fired than Shane. Let's see. Jeremy said, I hope we pick Brock Bowers at 6 if Neighbors is gone, fit to the Chargers. You want a tight end? I don't know, man. I'm never a fan of taking tight ends that early in a draft. But I know people think he's really special. Max Custom says, but I could take care of another first-round lineman, at least not this year. Okay, so you're saying you're fine with taking a first-round offensive lineman, just don't do it this year. I can respect that, Max Customs. It hasn't worked in recent history. Kevin says, do you think the G-men sign a bigger name wide receiver this offseason? I mean, it depends on what our plan is in the draft. I think we're going to address the wide receiver. I am leaning right now that I think we're going to go wide receiver with our first pick. If I'm wrong and we go quarterback or whatever, we certainly may spend money on a wide receiver in free agency because as many good pieces as we have at that position, we need that number one. There's no doubt about it. So, yeah, I think they're going to try to address the number one wide receiver in one way, shape, or form, whether that be in free agency or whether that be with the 6th overall pick. That's my prediction. I am just leaning more towards that. I think it's going to happen with our 6th pick. Let's see. Do you see the Giants trade? No, I don't. I'm not saying that they wouldn't do it. I just don't think the number one pick is going to be for sale. Let's see. Why we need a number one wide receiver? We suck. So we shouldn't try to. So what So what does that mean? What does that mean? Why do we need a number one wide receiver? We suck. So is every team that's bad not supposed to try to improve areas on their team that they're not good at? If you think the wide receiver is the best player available at one of the most important positions on a football team, you take him. What does that mean? What does that mean? Danny boy, we ain't got so we ain't gonna go. I mean, hypothetically, if our team's as bad as you think they are, we're not gonna go anywhere next year, no matter what we do with that pick. If you love a quarterback, you take the quarterback. But if you don't, you have to draft something. You take a tackle, you take an edge, you take a wide receiver, you take the best player. Let's see. Oh, you meant free agency. Let's see. Tana, people want Rattler just to see react. We're not getting Rattler. Not in the first round. You think they might trade Barkley if they tag him? Yeah, actually, it's Jamil. Credit to Patricia Traina. It's something I didn't think about, and she brought it up to me when I was on her channel like 6 days ago. Because I was always of the mindset of we're not going to tag Barkley because it's $12 million against the cap where you can't move the money around. I would sooner rather sign Barkley to a responsible deal than tag him. So I don't think it's right to Barkley either. Like I feel like he should get the opportunity to see what he's worth at this point, especially with our team the way that it is. So I was against the idea of tagging Barkley, but then she brought that up, and I'm like, actually, that could make sense. If you tag him, that does not take away the ability to potentially trade him. I could see that coming to fruition, possibly. I hope he's back, but I hope he's back on a reasonable deal. I don't know if he's going to be willing to take what the Giants feel is a reasonable deal, but we'll see. I just don't think we're in the place right now to be spending huge bucks on a running back with how many holes this team currently has, a 27-year-old running back at that. But a tag and trade could make sense. Could make sense if there was a team willing to trade, which I think there would be. I mean, there's already been reports that Harbaugh has come out and said with the Chargers that he'd be really interested in Saquon Barkley, that he wants to get back to, running the football. So, I mean, you think about him and Eckler on that team, right? So, hey, that is at least a possibility. Yeah, I kind of agree with this, Ronell, if he played on the tag. I think what Jamil was talking about was the possibility of a tag and trade. I think Neighbors will be as good as Harrison Jr. We'll see. I'm a huge fan of Harrison Jr. I've been a huge fan of Harrison Jr. since the first time I saw him a few years ago at Ohio State. I don't think that I like Neighbors a lot. I don't think that highly of him. I think Harrison Jr. is the best wide receiver, but hey, maybe he does end up being better. Doesn't he have to say? Yeah, he does, Patrick. But if you're Saquon, the way I look at it, if you're Saquon Barkley and the Giants are telling you we're not going to give you more than this, like let's say they go to Saquon and they say we'll only give you 18 million guaranteed or 16 million guaranteed, 3 years, 30 million. But they could cut you after 2 years and there's not very much guaranteed. And he doesn't like that. And he says, okay. And then they say, okay, we could tag you because we're not going to let you leave for nothing. We're not going to get nothing for you. We could tag you. You could tell us where you'd want to play. We could discuss potential trade possibilities with those teams, and you could try to work out an extension with them before the trade's complete. Something along those lines, or you could at least start the parameters of an extension. I could foresee a scenario like that. Pete, what's going on, man? He says, I know the NFL doesn't work this way, but I was one of the fans bemoaning the little DeVito win streak. Would you personally be happy right now if we had the first, second, or third pick? The answer reveals a lot either way, in my opinion. Pete, obviously I understand your logic. Like when the season's over, would I rather have the first pick than the sixth pick? Of course, I would rather have the first pick, especially in a draft with rich wide quarterbacks. So yeah, I understand that line of thought, but the way that I operate as a fan from within the year, and I don't tell anybody else how to fan. I understand how you think. I understand how a lot of people think when it gets to week 13 and you're like, I want the highest draft pick possible. I want them to lose every game. And I understand it. And I get to a point where I'm kind of just like, well, whatever happens, happens. I know I don't control it. I know that the players are playing for their jobs. I know the coaches are coaching for their jobs. So they're never going to intentionally lose. So it's completely out of my power. So I'm not going to fault the organization for going out there and trying to win as many games as possible. So me as a fan, knowing I have no control, knowing that the guys in that locker room are trying to sustain their jobs, are trying to be able to continue to play in this sport, I choose to say, okay, I have no control of this. Whatever happens, happens. If they win, I'm happy for the players and coaches. If they lose, I understand the good that comes from it. That's my mindset on it. I'm not going to get bent out of shape if my team wins a football game. But I'm also going to understand the positives that could come from a loss late in the year. That's just the way I look at it. Let's see. Chris, we should try to hire Mike Singletary. When's the last time Mike Singletary coached in the NFL? Obviously, he was a great linebacker with the Bears. He was the head coach for the 49ers for, I want to say, 2 years. I think Singletary was the coach before Harbaugh, if I'm not mistaken, right before Harbaugh took the job. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there was a coach in between. But has he coached in the league since then? I don't think he has. Maybe he has. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. What's up, Andrew? He says, hey, Chris, thanks for taking the comment. If the Giants, how did you know I was going to take the comment, Andrew? Andrew just assumed. He's like, I know he's taking the comment. Andrew says, hey, Chris, thanks for taking the comment. If the Giants somehow got T. Higgins in free agency, what would you do at 6? Okay. What's the scenario? Do I love a quarterback? I'm going to assume I don't, because this question would be easy if I loved the quarterback. I would just take a quarterback, right? If you loved one, it's the most important position. So assuming the top 3 quarterbacks are gone, assuming we signed a wide receiver in free agency before the draft, the answer's easy. I'm calling up the 300-pounder Alt. I'm telling Evan Neal, you're going to move your 300-pound ass to the guard, and we're putting Alt at the tackle. That's what I would do in that scenario if I can't trade down. Let's see. No Name says, would you rather get Dallas Turner? We traded back with the Jets at 10. I'll worry about that. I don't think we're trading back. I think we're going to stay where we are, but I would have to look more into the tackle prospects to give you a good answer on that. I know I like Alt. I'll tell you that from what I've seen. H5000 says optics franchise taking Barkley terrible, especially if the new agent plays hardball in the press. Well, obviously, yeah. Under that scenario, though, we weren't talking about keeping Barkley on the team. It was a tag and trade. Zach says move Evan Neal to the concession stand, half price hot dogs and burgers first game. Yeah. Tackle is the worst possible option at 6. Have to trade down. We've chosen tackle twice in the past 4 first rounds. I don't think we're taking tackle, so I think we're taking wide receiver. But I wouldn't be upset about it. Our offensive line still stinks. We had the worst offensive line again in the NFL. Just because things haven't worked in the past doesn't mean you shouldn't continue to try to improve it. So I wouldn't cry about it. Jeremy says, what's your opinion if we drafted Neighbors in the first and then traded back up into the middle of the first to draft J.J. McCarthy? I mean, I think you know my opinion on that. I haven't hit it. He's a very polarizing prospect. I've come on here, I've said it multiple times, long before the conclusion of the NFL season, long before I knew what pick we were going to have. And I don't want him at pick 6. I like J.J. McCarthy. I like him more than Penix. I like him more than Nix. Yeah, I would not hate that idea. I don't know. But, and hey, I could be completely wrong. I think J.J. McCarthy is going to go in the first 15 picks. I don't think we're going to have the ability to trade up to get him. And I don't think we're going to take him at 6. He's too much of an unknown. So, in the scenario you're talking about where he's available at 27 or 28, because I don't think we're trading up to the 15th pick, yeah, I'd be okay with that. I just don't think he's going to fall that far. I think he's going to impress at the combine. He's going to go a lot higher than people think. Johnny T says, Tana, the draft is deep at wide receiver. I think Bowers should be the target, the next Kelsey. You're all in on that. People like Bowers. I don't know. I'm never a big tight end guy. I'm just not, man. Not that early in the draft. Jedi says, why not tag Barkley, trade him to the Chargers for the 5th pick, then couple the 5th and 6th pick to trade with the Bears to number 1. If only it was that easy. If only it was that easy. If only it was that easy. Too many teams need quarterback to bank on being able to trade into the back end of the first round. Though if the opportunity is there and we go another position, yeah, that's exactly how I feel, Kashif. I'm not banking on that happening. But if it did happen, yeah, I would be okay with it. Mike Singletary, I know who he is. The Hall of Fame linebacker named the head coach of the Trinity Christian Addison football in Texas a couple of years ago. Yeah, I was talking NFL. But he was a head coach in the NFL. He was a head coach for the 49ers for a few years. But I don't think he's coached in the NFL for a long time. Let's see. Neil, what's going on? Tana, you see the reports of May falling? Oh, what I would do for a prospect like that. I'll believe it when I see it, man. I think Drake May is going to be a top 2 pick, but crazier things have happened on draft night. Quarterbacks fall all the time. I'm a fan of Drake May. Big fan of Drake May. Pete, what's going on? Appreciate the answer. I see don't tank and play to win comments in chat. Nothing wrong with that, but logically speaking, shouldn't they not have strong opinions either way in regards to draft picks and free agents? What do you? Oh, you mean fans that think that way? I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody how to fan. I don't think you should. This is just my personal opinion. I don't think you should ever get upset over a fan who roots for their team to win in any circumstance. I think you could be like, well, I disagree with that. This is my opinion, and here's why. But I can understand you're a fan of the team. You want the team to win. I don't think anybody should ever get upset at fans for that. Just like in certain scenarios, like this year, if you're rooting for the team to lose for the betterment of the team or what you feel is for the betterment of the team long term, I think fans should at least understand that. That's just my opinion. I'm not going to kill you. Where I kill fans, not kill fans, but where I disagree with fans when it comes to the tanking thing is when they start talking about it week 3. When they start talking about week 3, I'm like, I waited all year for this, and it does happen. You see it in my comments sometimes. You see it on Twitter. When fans start talking about trying to lose games early on in the season, and by the way, tanking is a fake thing. Teams don't tank in the NFL. Teams don't tank in the NFL. You want to talk about maybe the last game of the season the Eagles did it? Okay, fine. Teams don't intentionally, and if they do, it's a one-off. It's not a common thing. Teams don't intentionally from the jump or early on in the season or even mid-season say we're going to intentionally go out there and try to lose football games. It doesn't happen. Because if it did, Brian Dable might have lost his job. People were calling for his job mid-season, and then they won 3 games and people laid off. Teams aren't going to intentionally try to lose football games. Let's see. And Talking with Landon says, Chris, random question. Who do you want to play week 1? I don't know. A team we can beat. A team we can beat. So that would be, I don't know, maybe Washington, maybe who? I don't know. Who do we play? We play the NFC South. I wouldn't mind playing anybody in the South. I think we could beat most of those teams. So a team we could beat. And Jeremy, I respect that. I respect that. But you know what I heard this about too? I heard about Kyle Pitts. How'd that pick work out? I'm not saying the pick couldn't work out, but I don't know. I look at the tight end position and I'm like, Travis Kelce was a day 3 pick or late day 2 pick. Mark Andrews, same thing. George Kittle, day 3 pick. I could get value there. I don't know. He better be the best tight end in the NFL if we're going to take him 5th overall. That's what I'll say. James says you got to start with the quarterback because you may have to adjust your offense to his style of play and skill set. If there's a quarterback you like, sure, I agree. Adam says 3 quarterbacks, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Neighbors are very likely the top picks. Do we stay there and pick or move down? Again, all depends on the offers we're getting. And how they feel about Roma Dunze and Joe Alt and so on and so forth. But it depends on the offers you're getting. But if you get a good deal, a good offer, yeah. If it makes sense, you trade down. You get more draft capital. And Rise. He says, hey, Chris, you are the man. Love your chat. I appreciate it, man. I hope you guys are having a good day. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll probably hang out with you guys for about another 45 minutes to an hour. I'm going to try to do these once a week as the offseason gets closer. I was going to make a video today. I'm like, I'll go live. I got a few hours to talk with you guys. So figured I'd go live and talk with you guys for a bit. I hope you guys are having a good weekend. Let's see. But next week, hopefully we'll get some big news. Hopefully we get our defensive coordinator and we go from there. Would you rather the 3rd wide receiver or the 1st tackle? Depends. Like it that to me is a draft. It's dependent on the draft you're in, right? Like in the 2020 draft when we 2020 draft when we took Andrew Thomas, in that draft I probably would have told you the 3rd tackle because it was a strong tackle draft class. In this draft class, I don't know. It's a rich wide receiver class along with some good tackles. So it's all dependent on who's the best player on your board. That's what Joe Shane's got to do. I think they could potentially go tackle. I think they could also potentially go wide receiver if they don't go quarterback. And I'm leaning wide receiver. And it has as much to do with what Joe Shane has said and hinted at as much as anything else. Well, I don't think we're going to take a tackle with that 1st pick. I wouldn't be upset about it. I'm going to continue to say that, man. Let's see. Yeah, man, I appreciate you for being here, Renell, man. Let's see. Ryu says, Chris, I have a feeling we will go with Jerome Henderson. See, I was of that mindset too, Ryu. I've been of that mindset that we're going to go with Jerome Henderson because it just makes sense for familiarity purposes. And, the guys that we apparently wanted, we didn't end up getting. We obviously respect Henderson. He's been with us since 2020. He's got a really good reputation. But the longer this drags out, the more I think that it's less likely we're going to go with Jerome Henderson. Now, it's entirely possible we have our final interview with Daly, who I think is the front runner right now. And they're like, okay, we just wanted to cross all our T's, dot all our I's. Now we're comfortable hiring Henderson. And maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe they're waiting until the end of the Super Bowl and they interview Daly again and they say, all right, now we feel even more confident Henderson's our guy. But the fact that this is continuing to drag out, the fact that Kansas City's in the Super Bowl, Kansas City probably does not want it to be a distraction for their team. They probably told the Giants, hold off on the next interview. Once we've completed the Super Bowl, then do what you got to do. That's where I'm at. That's what I think we're going to do. Record prediction for the Giants next year. How could I answer that right now? I can't answer that right now. I don't know half our roster. Adam says, how much do we blame the GM for the assistant coaches we've had to fire in the difficult position we're in recruiting replacements? Yeah, I mean, listen, he's got to take some responsibility for sure. Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, whether Wink was his first choice or not, it appeared Graham was. We didn't end up retaining Graham because Graham left. He was still his choice. Like, Dave Gettleman still got blamed for Pat Shurmur, even though Shurmur may not have been his first choice. So, yeah, I mean, listen, if the team ultimately, Adam, if the team doesn't do well, the buck, there's only so many times you can deflect. The buck eventually is going to fall on the shoulders of Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen. So this team has to get better. There's no doubt about it. And hopefully next year they do. If they don't, we could start to see some changes. What's up, Vincent, man? Thanks for popping in. No, not that I've heard, AJ, and he's a great defensive line coach. He's always had that reputation. But like, I don't know, Patterson's kind of up there in age. I don't know if he'd want a defensive coordinator job. He kind of has a job that he's excelled at. He's great at. He may, at this stage in his career, may not want a defensive coordinator job. But to my knowledge, no, we have not interviewed him. But I'm damn glad he's our defensive line coach. He's done a great job with Dexter Lawrence. Let's see. Does Jones finish the year as a starter? This is a good question. I want to get the pulse of the chat on this. And obviously, we'll be able to answer this question after the draft. Like, if we draft a quarterback, clearly not in the first round. If Daniel Jones does not get hurt next year, because you got to take that out of the equation. If he gets hurt, of course, he's not going to finish the year as a starter. If Daniel Jones does not get hurt next year, he stays healthy, does he finish the year as the starter? Terry says no, he's benched. Terry wants a bench just for Daniel Jones. Daniel, sit your $40 million ass right here. I don't want you getting up from this bench for the rest of the year. Let's see. Max says he will get benched. Danny says yup. He's trash no matter what. D says. Eric says yes. We'll get to keep him on ice. Let's see. I'm going to say no. I hope I'm wrong, because I do think he's going to start the year as the starter for the Giants. And if he doesn't finish the year as the Giants starter, it means we probably didn't have a good year. So I hope I'm wrong. And I hope Daniel Jones proves me wrong, man. Just like when I reacted the way that I did. I always say it. I want to look like the biggest fool in the history of New York Giants fandom for being the guy that exploded the way that he did for the Daniel Jones pick. I'm always rooting for him as long as he's the quarterback for my football team. And I do think he's going to start the year as the quarterback. And I don't think we're drafting a quarterback at 6 or trading up. But I don't think he's going to finish the year as a starter. I think we're either A, going to draft a quarterback early day 2, and he will eventually take over because Jones will struggle at some point. Or B, we will sign a very good backup, and they will have a much shorter leash on Daniel Jones. And at some point in the year, when he struggles, he will be replaced. If you ask me that question today. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope he has a great year, but I got to tell you guys honestly how I feel, and that's how I feel. I don't think he will finish the year as a starter. Let's see. What's up, Cribs and Ribs, man? Thanks for popping in. What's going on, Angelo, man? Thanks for popping in. Jones going to move to tight end, yeah. Would you consider getting Fields at all? No, I would not. No disrespect to Fields. I'm of the belief that I would rather draft a quarterback, then I don't. The way I look at Fields is he potentially could be a good quarterback in the NFL for sure, but I don't think he's ever going to be an elite quarterback. And I would rather than having to commit to Fields, because that's what you're going to have to do if you trade for him, who, in my opinion, ceiling might be a top 10 quarterback. I don't think he's ever going to be a top 5 quarterback. I would rather just draft my quarterback, because then you're going to have to pay Fields a boatload of money. You see what quarterbacks are getting paid. He's going to be a free agent after this year. No, I have no interest in trading for Justin Fields. Let's see. I don't disagree with that either, Danny. But if I had to guess, next year at some point he'll be replaced. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he's great. I'll be rooting my ass off for him. Evan says the Giants need a quarterback who can spread the ball over the field with a strong arm. To me, that's either Bo Nix or Michael Penix. Hey, Evan, I don't claim to be the best talent evaluator in the world. I don't think Bo Nix has a super arm. And I'll be fair that I think Bo Nix at this point, because I've never been a fan of his, I think Bo Nix at this point is overhated. Like when I go on Twitter, people are going out of their way to destroy him. I think he's better than some people are making him out to be. But yeah, I don't think Bo Nix has a big arm. I think I'm not saying it's a bad arm, but it's not a plus arm to me. Penix has a plus arm. I think McCarthy has a plus arm. Obviously May has a plus arm, and the same could be said for Caleb. I don't think Bo Nix has a big arm. Let's see. The answer is Penix, so will fit right in. Chris, you missed my super chat? Oh, let me try to find it, Luis. Sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll go up and try to find it. Oh, I got you. Sorry about that. He says, team's in a weird place. This is unique offseason. Yeah, I mean, I think last offseason was pretty cut and dry, at least for me, even though a lot of fans tried to fight it. Like, and I'll continue to say this, it was obvious to me that they were going to have to keep Daniel Jones. And by keeping Daniel Jones, you were going to have to keep Saquon Barkley. It was just a matter of how you went about doing it. Did you tag Jones or did you sign him? So it was pretty cut and dry. This offseason is not nearly as obvious to me, this offseason. Like, I could see them going many different ways in terms of how they want to build this football team this year. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see the route in which they decide to go, you know, and we're going to start to find that out in March. But yeah, I'm just giving you guys my guess right now. That doesn't mean I'm going to be right. Sometimes I'm wrong. I don't think we're drafting a quarterback early in the draft. I think we're going to have a patchwork year at the quarterback position, and we're going to try to fill other holes and see where that takes us as we continue to build this football team. But that's just how I feel. I'm not saying I'm going to be right. Let's see. I just don't think Jones has the brain to be an elite quarterback. He's mediocre at best, hasn't excelled where they open the playbook. Yeah. No, some of y'all think if we had a good quarterback, we still certainly would struggle with this offensive line. Let's see. Terry says, do you think if we have a losing season, Dable's gone? No, I mean, possibly, but I think there's more factors than to just if he has a losing season. Like if the Giants win 7 games and they play competitive, they play a pretty tough schedule next year, right? They're playing the AFC North. Every team in that division is good, especially with getting Joe Burrow back. The Steelers are always competitive. Mike Tomlin, I think one of the top 3, 4, 5 head coaches in the league, always finds a way to have that team making the playoffs or just being outside of it. So the Browns obviously have a great defense, and the Ravens are the Ravens. So that's a tough division, man. So no, not necessarily. If he wins 7 games and the team is somewhat competitive and there's reason for some hope going forward, no, I think he keeps his job. But if the team completely bombs in the fashion that they did for Joe Judge in his second year, or the same could be said for Pat Shurmur in his second year, yeah, he's could be in trouble. But it depends. It depends. Um, let's see. Let's see. I'm not a huge fan of Adunze, so we will probably take him. Is that usually how it works? Let's see. I was a huge fan of Andrew Thomas. We took him. That worked. I was not a huge fan of Daniel Jones on draft night. They took him. That did not work. um, yeah. I mean, I was a big fan of Deonte Banks. They took him. So I don't know. We'll see. So you're not always gonna like the guys they pick. Let's see. Chris, put your suit on and you're Joe Shane. What's your offer for the number one pick if you want that quarterback? I mean, I talked about this in my last video. I think what all you got to do is go back and look at last year's trade, and it wouldn't be quite as much as this, but the Carolina Panthers traded up from 9-1, right? So I look at that and I say, okay, we're at 6, so it's going to be a little bit less. But the Carolina Panthers trade was they gave up the first pick in last year's draft, so the 9th overall pick. They gave up a future first, which turned out to be the first pick, which they didn't know that would happen, but a future first. I believe a second-round pick in last year's draft and a second-round pick in 2025. And in addition to that, they gave up Williams, the wide receiver, I think, right? Which I would value at as a late first-round pick. That's why when you look at what wide receivers have gotten in recent history. So if that's the case, Carolina essentially gave up a late first-round pick, an unknown future first-round pick the following in 2024, a first-round pick that year, a second-round pick that year, and a 2025 second-round pick. So it wouldn't be quite that much, but I think it would be at least the 6th pick, a first-round pick in 2025, one of our 2 second-round picks this year, and probably a future second-round pick. It would probably be everything that Carolina to give up minus the player. That would at least be my estimate. For 2 firsts, 2 seconds. That's what you'd probably have to give up to move up and get the first pick. But I don't think Chicago's going to trade the first pick. And that trade obviously didn't work out for Carolina. Let's see. Oh, DJ Moore. I'm sorry. I said Williams. DJ Moore, of course. King John, what's going on, man? He says, for the Giants, what has to be the first we have to do to getting back to the Super Bowl? We got to get our quarterback. That's just the reality of the situation. And the offensive line. We need both. Like, I don't think there's one thing. But yeah, we need to upgrade the quarterback. There's no doubt about it in my mind at this point. Do I think Daniel Jones could be a good quarterback? I do. I still do. And I still think he had a good year in 2022. And I was hoping he could build off of that. But the guy gets hurt too much. He didn't build off of it in the limited sample size that we saw last year. And I'm not saying that has to happen this year. That might happen in 2025. But we've got to get the quarterback. And we got to fix the line. That's where it starts for me. If you fix the line and you find the quarterback, this team could be competing for a Super Bowl in 2 years. Look at the Detroit Lions. They fixed the line. They found a quarterback. It's the quarterback and the line, man. And it may not be all fixed this year. But that's where it starts for me. And what's up, Vibes? He says, time is up. We have to move on. Get the line together and let's go from there. Yeah. And there's it doesn't have to be done one specific way. Like, I'm okay if they elect to, they're obviously financially obligated to Daniel Jones this year. I never want you to force a quarterback. So that being said, I'm fine with that. If you don't identify that you love a quarterback and you have to pay Daniel Jones the absorbent amount of money you still do, you roll with him this year and you see what happens. Let the chips fall where they may. But unless Daniel Jones takes a huge leap, which I will cross my fingers and hope that he does, if he comes back as the starter, you're going to replace him sooner than later. But if that's the case, you got to start getting this line right. Until this line gets good, we can talk about the quarterback all we want. It's the most important position. No disagreement there. We need to improve it. Until this line gets satisfactory, we ain't beating good teams. We're not beating good teams. It's not happening. Not consistently. It's not happening. So both need to happen. I don't think some magician's going to come in here and suddenly we're going to be able to beat some of the better teams in the league, which when you're talking Super Bowl, that's all that matters. And I also don't think you're going to find another Pat Mahomes. So my mindset on that is, yes, you need a good quarterback, but you're not going to out Pat Mahomes. You're not going to find a better quarterback than Pat Mahomes if you're living in the world of reality. So how do you beat Pat Mahomes? You got to have a good roster. You got to have a great offensive line. You have to be able to control the clock, and you have to be able to get him on the ground. You got to get a good pass rush. So we got to get a lot stronger in the trenches. We're not going to out Pat Mahomes, but we certainly need an upgrade at the quarterback. I'm not going to deny that. Coded, what's going on? Since my one-chip challenge wager works so well, if we make the Super Bowl, you and Bad Dog have to go. I mean, we're not making the Super Bowl, but sure. I'm sorry, Dana. CJ Stroud didn't have a healthy O-line. Did they make the Super Bowl? They made the playoffs, and he's awesome. Did they make the Super Bowl? How'd they do when they played a good team in the playoffs? They lost 31-10 against the Baltimore Ravens. The Houston Texans essentially, and listen, I think CJ Stroud is going to be one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. I think he's fantastic. The Houston Texans basically had the same year that we had last year. They were a team that nobody thought was going to make the playoffs, that won 9 or 10 games. We won 9. I think they won 10. We didn't play our starters the last game. That won a playoff game against a okay opponent, and then got smacked when they played somebody good. Do you think they're a Super Bowl contender? Do you think the Houston Texans, with the roster they currently have, can go up against Pat Mahomes and can go up against some of these elite teams and beat them? I don't. Let's see. Johnny says, Tana, assuming a quarterback isn't there at 6, Bowers in the first, Barton in the second. You guys are all on the Bowers train. Oh, you actually said it earlier. Let's see. Natalie says, ugh. Year 3000, Daniel Jones leads the Giants to 8-8. Well, yeah, but Green Bay also has a very good offensive line. They ranked 4th this year per PFF. They didn't give up a sack in both of their playoff games against 2 incredible defenses. They didn't give up 1 sack to the Cowboys and the 49ers. 49ers probably have the best defensive line in football. Didn't give up 1 sack. I mean, Jordan Love's played great. I'm not saying he didn't. But the Packers also have a great offensive line. Let's see. Giants' problem is they don't have the upper echelon quarterback, and they have a horrible line. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Let's see. At least CJ Stroud looked good in his first year. So CJ Stroud's awesome. I think CJ Stroud's going to be one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. And if they continue to improve that team around him, and they don't do to him what the Colts did to Andrew Luck, he could very well win a Super Bowl. Giants have to go quarterback to restore hope. I mean, I agree. At some point, they're going to have to. Whether it be this year or next, they're going to need to take a quarterback. Unless Daniel Jones somehow becomes a magician, which I am of the point now. I was ready to close the book on Daniel Jones. Obviously, I didn't want to rag on him on the way out going into 2022. The writing was on the wall. We didn't sign him to the 5th-year extension. He had a very good year. I said to myself, okay, I'm going to back the guy. I understand if we sign him. I don't want to give him a blind faith contract like Jalen Hurts got. Give him essentially 2 franchise tags and see if he could grow further. He didn't grow further. He got hurt again. I'm not opening up that book again. I understand he may be the quarterback this year, but there's going to come a point in time where we need to get a new book. Daniel Jones is not going to be the book that brings us to the Super Bowl. That's my mindset at this point. It's year 6, guys. It's year 6. You showed some growth for sure year 5. And I do think he could be a good quarterback in the NFL. I do. He can't be a great one. That's my honest opinion. Let's see. The team's been bad. The team's been bad. Cavill says, Tana, did you see Bo Nix stinking up in the Senior Bowl? I don't want Bo Nix. I think he could be a day 2 pick. I don't want Bo Nix. Come to Jesus moment for Chris. Listen, I don't think he's the only problem, or even probably the main problem, but he's not an elite quarterback. And when you have an opportunity to improve that position, to get a guy that could potentially be one, you should do it. That's it. We didn't have that opportunity last year because of the way Jones played. He put us in a position to make the playoffs. Jacob says, Tana, not sure if you heard this, but one guy to look at is Jackson Power Johnson, O-line from Oregon. I've seen his name mentioned a few times on Twitter, but I haven't looked into him. I mean, I agree with that. The team has sucked. But the top priority for the Giants is getting better guard play. A running back like Barkley should. Our offensive line's awful. That's definitely got to be one of the 2 or 3 main areas of focus this offseason. Have you heard that Joe Shane wants to move up for a quarterback? Have I? No. But I just think it's common sense. Like, I think he would if the opportunity was there. I just don't think the opportunity is going to be there. So I'm not going to get my hopes up. That's why I've kind of come around to the fact that I don't expect us to take a quarterback in the first round. Alvin says, I knew back in 2019 Jones wasn't any good. I wanted to trade Jones after 2019 and dreamt Herbert. Hey, man, kudos to you. I tried to give him a fair shake. But my hand's kind of tired at this point. And Playboy Phil says, I'd take and trade Barkley as part of a package for the number 1 pick if possible. Chicago has capped for him. Sure. Absolutely, if Chicago was willing to do that. Let's see. React says, I'm glad the Chargers want Barkley bad. Don't want him back. Can't pay him. And Jones, I know it sucks. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think now, after I talked to Patricia, I do think we're going to at least tag Barkley if we don't sign him. But that doesn't mean we won't trade him, whether it be in season or before the year starts. I definitely think they'd potentially trade him. Lucas Eureka says, I'm done. What are you done with? What are you done with? That's main offseason. Need O-line. I mean, I agree with you. But I'm not gonna act like we don't need to improve the quarterback position anymore. It's been 6 years, guys. If the opportunity is there, we need to do it. Herbert is better than Jones for sure, but how many playoff games has Herbert played over Jones? I mean, I agree. They haven't built the team properly. It takes 2 to tango. You need a very good quarterback, and you need a very good team. Very good quarterback can't do it by himself. Herbert on paper is one of the 5 or 6 most talented quarterbacks in the sport. Hasn't won a playoff game. He's been to the playoffs once. Same can be said for Lawrence, who's won 1 playoff game, and he's been to the playoffs once. Let's see. Of course we have holes. We have tons of holes. Our offensive line sucks. We have plenty of holes on the defensive side as well. We have holes all over this roster. So that's accurate. That's accurate. Is Bad Dog gloating about the Lakers last night? He's a Knicks fan, so I don't think so. I didn't watch his play-by-play, but he's a Knicks fan. Gift 2 says Herbert is better than Jones for sure. Oh, I already read that. H5000 says DJ was given $80 million guaranteed. At the time, I said he would have to win games in 2023 or DJ would be gone in 2020. However, the DJ haters make me say, I mean, I'm never going to root for DJ not to be successful, man. I hope he is if he gets an opportunity this year. I hope he proves me wrong. I don't think he's going to be the long-term answer here anymore. So I went into last year thinking it was possible, which is why I wanted to sign him. Swing says we have 2 spots filled, Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence. Yeah. I mean, there's other potential guys, right? Deontay Banks certainly could be a long-term piece. I think he showed signs of high potential last year. Obviously, he's not a finished product. Kayvon Thibodeau has potential for sure to be a long-term piece at an important position. I think Wandell could very well be a long-term piece. He's not a number one wide receiver, but I think he could be a long-term contributor to this team. I think there's pieces, but we have a lot more pieces that we're going to need. I think Bobby Okereke is a nice piece. But yeah, we need to continue to build. Look at all the good teams. What do they have, buddy? I mean, listen, you're not. I know. I've been saying it for 6 years on YouTube. I know. Offensive line, defensive line. You need to be able to get after the quarterback. You need to be able to protect yours. It's football 101. So I agree. I don't think there's some magician we're going to draft and this team's suddenly going to be great. No, we need both. Let's see. Black the Crimson says, if we're going to be bad next year, why not just wait for Sanders and move up for him if we need to build the offensive line and defensive line? I mean, that might be what we do. But who knows if we're going to, the thing is, we don't know if we're going to be bad. We don't know. Like, we are going to go into the year thinking we're bad, but we don't know. Like, we could win 9 or 10 games next year. It's entirely possible. We won 9 games the year before. We had a ton of injuries this year to important players. Andrew Thomas missed almost half the season. Barkley missed a lot of time. We lost a lot of games we probably should have won. We should have won the Jets game for sure. Could have easily won the Bills game. So you don't know. I mean, football is a game of inches, so we don't know where we're going to be. We're not going to intentionally try to lose. But yeah, I get the strategy this year if you're not drafting a quarterback to try to trade back to give yourself more assets for the future in the occurrence that you have to trade up for a quarterback in the future. I get that. And maybe that's the path they will take if they get the right offer, whether that be Sanders or whether that be somebody else. If they want to go quarterback the following year, or who knows, they could always trade for a veteran too. They could go that route. Bottom line is we need to improve this team. John says, do we re-sign McKinney? I'm leaning no. I would love him back, but I'm leaning it's not going to happen. He hired a super agent, man. I hope he's back, but I just think he's going to be out of our price range. Cody Trout says, who takes a bigger dump on the hopes and dreams of Giants fans? Evan Neal, Eric Flowers, or Daniel Jones? I'm going to say Eric Flowers, man. And obviously most people are going to say Daniel Jones because it's recency bias and he plays the most important position. But out of that, and Evan Neal hasn't played long enough. He's only been here 2 years. I'm going to say Eric Flowers, man. Eric Flowers single-handedly ruined any hopes of Eli Manning having a chance to compete for a Super Bowl late in his career. I remember, and I didn't live stream the games at the time. I remember in 2018 when I first started making content on YouTube, which was Saquon Barkley's rookie year, going into the year excited. You're like, okay, it's probably false hope. It's probably short-sighted, but we got Barkley. We still have Eli. We've got Odell. We're only 2 years removed from being a very good football team. And I went into the year with the same thought process with Flowers that I had Evan Neal coming into this year, saying, if Eric Flowers could even be okay, we could be really good. The first drive of the year against the Jacksonville Jaguars, I knew the season was over. Eric Flowers completely ruined any chances the team ever had to be competitive. Since he took over as a New York Giants lineman, he was awful at the tackle spot. And that first drive against the Jaguars, he missed on like 3 different blocks. If you're asking me between those 3, I would say Eric Flowers. Well, Dave Gettleman didn't draft Eric Flowers. He did a lot of things, but you can't blame him for that. He didn't draft Eric Flowers. Let's see. What's up, Hirsch, man? Thanks for popping in, man. Said how this line hurt Eli's ending Barkley's career in the Jones development. Yeah, I mean, listen. I always say it, man. What's up, golf is hard. I always say it, man. For people that think like the quarterback is like the only reason why, because that was because I think fans are at the point now where they want to move on from Daniel Jones, and I understand it. Okay, I'm not railing against those fans. I understand it, but I think they've gotten to the point where even things that are not Jones's fault, they blame on Jones. Like the sack rate this year, the Giants gave up the second most sacks ever in the history of the NFL in a single season. We gave up like 84, 85 sacks. And fans say, well, it's because Daniel Jones' processing speed. And I'm sure some of those sacks are. But all you got to do is look at Eli Manning. Eli Manning had a great offensive line his first 5, 6, 7 years of his career. The second half of his career, his offensive line was abysmal, and he got sacked all the time, or he was just getting rid of the football. So, no, I think the offensive line is a big reason why Daniel Jones is getting hit as much as he is. And I think it's a major reason why Eli Manning sputtered out over the second half of his career. He didn't go from being one of the best 5 quarterbacks in the sport in 2011 to being awful and forgetting how to play football by 2013. No, the offensive line deteriorated, got worse. And we didn't have the weapons to be able to sustain it after the fact. Let's see. Chris, if you could redraft 2018 and 2019, who are you taking in each of the first rounds? 2018, I would take, if I go, I mean, obviously, Josh Allen, if I go back in time. But in the world of reality, and when I say that, I mean the quarterback, of course, not the pass rusher, it was 2019. But obviously, if in the world of reality, because Josh Allen was never a possibility, knowing that we weren't taking a quarterback with that pick, I would trade down. I would have traded down from pick 2 to pick 5 or 6, still get a Bradley Chubb or a Quentin Nelson and start my rebuild then and there. That's what I would have done if I wasn't going quarterback. But if you're telling me do a redraft, I would take Josh Allen with the second pick if he was available. What's up? What's up, Andrew? Man, thanks for popping the stream, man. Justin Herbert wasn't in that draft. Justin Herbert wasn't until 2020. Let's see. John Mara is the biggest problem with the Giants. He is the common denominator. He's definitely a part of it. I'm not going to say he's not. Josh Allen would have tanked and burned on that team. You might be right. It's a clear hypothetical. We'll never know, but you might be right. He obviously went into a much better situation than that of Daniel Jones. You might be right. If you took him in 2018, Pat Shurmur would have been the coach. The line was bad. We clearly didn't have enough patience to see it through after we fired Shurmur after Daniel Jones' first year. It would have been a lot of instability for Josh Allen. He was a project, as talented as he is. You might be right, but we'll never know. Unfortunately, we didn't take him. Let's see. Bryce says, I like Jones, but people want him gone. He's got 1 year left. Leave the man alone and see how it goes. We are rebuilding. I'm okay with that. If that's the path that they go, I'm okay with that. I'm not going to cry if they stick with him this year, if they don't love a quarterback with their pick. Achilles says, we could have had Saquon and Lamar in the same draft. Well, only if we traded up, because the Ravens had to trade up to get him. We didn't. If we traded up, sure. Yeah. James says Jones never corrected a cornerback's dream, which is staring down receivers' pocket awareness holds. I think Jones became shell shocked, man. You saw it at the beginning of this year. After Andrew Thomas got hurt this year, like he played scared, man. I mean, part of me can't blame him. The offensive line was so bad without Andrew Thomas, but I think he just had a mental cock in his head and he was getting rid of the ball no matter what. And you can't do that. And obviously you saw his play, taper off because of it. I think he was playing scared. What's up, Dan, man? Thanks for popping in, man. WL says it'd be nice if we could get Neighbors and Jaden Daniels. I just saw a pig fly by my window. Gift 2 says, I mean, not knowing how things turned out, I want the Quentin Nelson and Josh Allen edge. And what's up, Chris L, man? Thanks for popping in. Hey, Chris, you hear the Giant Stadium is hosting the 2026 World Cup final? I did. Well, I heard rumors about that. I didn't know when it was going to be because people were saying that last year that the Giants should convert to grass because of that. or at least maybe people were saying that they may convert to grass because of that, which would be great. But I didn't know it was the World Cup final. I knew it was a big soccer tournament. Yeah, which makes sense. Obviously, the World Cup. I didn't know it was the final, but that's awesome. Give Two says, how could you hold the ball too long when you mentally only have 2 seconds to get rid of it? Sometimes he holds the ball too long. Other times he gets rid of the ball sooner than he should. He doesn't scan the field, and he throws to his first read. World Heavy says Madden needs a Daniel Jones setting where the O-line lets guys get a free shot every 4 tries. Slink says it's understandable Jones got scared with how much the O-line let him get hit. Getting scared like that is unfortunately another mark against him being a starter. It happened to Eli Manning too. Eli Manning got scared in the latter portion of his career. We all remember it. When I'm not going to choose to not remember it as much as I loved Eli. He was falling to the ground when Eric Flowers was his left tackle late in his career. He had a mental clock too. Let's see. Bryce says, Chris, how many current O linemen will be on the team next year? Thomas, Neal, McKeithen, I think, would be back. Zudu will be back. Obviously, John Michael Schmitz will be back. That's 5. Who am I forgetting? That will more than Glowinski's not going to be back. What was the dude's name that we picked up again? He played right tackle for us this year. We picked him up from the Eagles after he was initially on our team. I don't know his contract status. Why am I forgetting his name? Parrott won't be back. He'll be gone, I think. I think those 5 are the only locks. Maybe one other that I'm forgetting. Maybe one other. Phillips. Yeah, Phillips. There you go. Phillips. Tyree Phillips. I don't know his contract status. As far as the starters, I mean, Smith will be a starter. I think Neal will be a starter somewhere in the line. I'm personally leaning right tackle right now. Thomas will be a starter. I think Zudu will probably get a crack, if I had to guess. And I think we'll either sign a guard to be a starter or draft a guard early in this year's draft to be the other starter. Or maybe Azuda doesn't get a crack and we draft a guard early and we sign a guard. I don't know. But I think there's definitely at least one starter at a bare minimum that's not on this roster right now. And it'll be addressed in either free agency or the draft, possibly 2. Let's see. Should Maris sell? He's not going to sell the team. I wish DJ would show some more tenacity like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. I just wish we would win games, man. I don't care what he shows, just win games. Darren says that first game this year against Dallas was embarrassing. DJ was getting hit before he took 2 steps. It was awful. It was awful. Awful. Oh, Pugh's another lineman. He'll be gone. But yeah, it was awful. And I think the first 5 or 6 games this year really showed you how important Andrew Thomas is to this roster. Like once he went down, the offensive line became like an all-time bad offensive line. What do you think about Blake Corum? I don't know where Blake Corum is being mocked. He's one of my favorite players in college football. He's undersized, right? I mean, he's not undersized in the sense of like a Maurice Jones-Drew, who was 5'6", but he was built like a brick shit house. Like he was 5'6", like I don't know how much he weighed, but he was massive. He's undersized. I think he's like 5'8". I don't know his weight. I want to say maybe 200. I don't know. So I don't think he'd be a very early pick. I don't know where he's being mocked. He's a tremendous college player, and he will certainly be drafted. If I had to guess, he's probably being mocked in the 3rd or 4th round area. I don't think he'd be a 2nd round pick, but I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, he's only 190. I don't view him as I don't view him as a number 1 running back on a football team. I don't think he'll be drafted that way. I think he could be a nice platoon running back. Let's see. We all know the turf at MetLife is horrible and is responsible for at least several injuries last year. How does the league and NFLPA not insist on safe conditions for us in visiting? I wish I had the answer for you, man. It's money. I think that's the main reason why we have turf. Because with grass, you have to constantly repair the field. But do we cut or keep Slayton? I've been on record now of saying that I think we should keep Slayton. But I think we should extend him. We shouldn't keep him on the contract we currently have him on. Because this year he's like $8 million against the cap. I would extend him and spread the money out. I would give him like a 3-year, $27 million extension, whatever amount guaranteed, and just spread the money out so it doesn't go against the cap that much this year. But I wouldn't cut him. I would keep him. I think he's a good player. Let's see. Looking back on this season, I think the team got complacent for making the playoffs last season. I think it's a good learning experience for Dable, and I think him and Shane will figure it out. Vince, I hope you're right, man, and I definitely think they can. I think there's more to it than just that, but yeah, and I think you also, I think inexperience is a big part of it too. It was really the first year. Well, not really. It was the first year of Dable's entire career where he had to deal with any kind of stress. I mean, his first year there was no stress, so the team was exceeding all expectations. You're the mayor of the town your first year, just like Joe Judge was. This year you had to deal with adversity. We'll see how tough Shane and Dable are this year when things didn't go as well. And we'll see how they respond. Let's see. I'm prying the O-line coach we hired. I'm praying the O-line coach we hired is the real answer for our turn. I hope so, give two, man. Where do you think Bellinger's ceiling is? It's so hard to say, man. I think he could be a good player, though. I mean, I'm not going to say George Kittle, but I think he could be a good player. I think he could be definitely a solid tight end for us. Like, he's clearly capable of being like what Kevin Boss was or what Jake Ballard was. Like, he's definitely could be a player like that for us, which is fine. Do I think he's a superstar? Probably not, but that's okay. I think he could be a good tight end for us. Um, Chris, you gonna? No, I am not, Mickey. Right now, you think Waller's on the team next year? Yes, but only for one more year. I think we cut him the following year when we could save $10 million. But for this year, when you only save about 7 for a team that already lacks weapons, I think they bring him back. But again, I think he'll be cut the following year, almost no matter what. Like even if he has a good year, I think he'll be cut because you save $10 million. Let's see. What do you think the 3 most catastrophic plays of the season was? I got block kick versus Dallas. That's certainly in the top 3. Pick 6 versus Witherspoon. That's probably the most embarrassing play. And Tyrod missing Saquon on the 2-point conversion versus the Rams. I think you hit on the first 2 for sure. Because I think the Seattle game was the like the tipping point where you were like, okay, we're done. Like the season's over. We're not gonna compete for the playoffs. The first game was so important because that was gonna set the tone for the rest of the year. Even if we lost, if it was a competitive loss, you would have had good vibes. You would have been like, okay, there's something to build off of, right? We showed at least we could compete with Dallas, and we got manhandled. And the way that drive started out, everything was working according to plan. It looked exactly like the only drive we saw with the first team offense in preseason, where it was just boom, 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 boom. Most of it was running with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, but we were moving the ball down the field at will. And then we get inside like the 8-yard line or whatever it was. And then we get hit for 2 penalties. Andrew Thomas, I think, was the first one, a full start. And then we get it blocked and they return it for a touchdown. And Andrew Thomas gets hurt. So that was absolutely, it's crazy because Dable's first 2 years, if you ask me what the major turning point was, both of them occurred in the first game of the season. The first year, the 2-point conversion against the Tennessee Titans set the tone for the whole year. It was Dable being like, I believe in you guys. This is not the same old Giants. We're gonna flip the script, and it turned everything. It gave us momentum. We started 6-1. This past year, the complete opposite. And it was the first drive of the season. And yeah, I would absolutely the pick 6 from Daniel Jones would be up there as one of the most catastrophic plays. Just that game in general. And another play. I'll point to one that you didn't say. The last play of the game against the Bills, I thought that was a mistake on Kafka or Dable's part. Personally, I would have ran it there with Saquon from the 1-yard line rather than throw the pass that they did to Waller, not to come down with that. That was certainly a catastrophic point. Losing to the Jets in the manner in which we did, that was bad too. So, I mean, the third one, I'm not sure, but the first two for sure. The opening week for sure, opening drive, and the Seattle game. Let's see. I personally think the injuries came from a lack of hitting and taking hits really until the first game of the season. Maybe. The Giants tush push that injured JMS. Jets game 4-1 with an injured kicker. Yeah, we all forget about that too. Graham Gano this year, we've talked about throughout the stream how important Andrew Thomas was. I think this year you probably should have grown even more of an appreciation for Graham Gano than what we already had for him. Knowing that you have a kicker that is super reliable, no matter what, for the most part, is very valuable in the NFL, especially for a team like the Giants that plays so many close games. For him not to be himself this year, at least partially due to injuries, that was bad for this team too. Chris, at the end of the game, Tyrod admitted to audibling on that play, so I disagree. That was all on Tyrod. Oh, yeah, whoever it was, all right, if it was on Tyrod, then actually no. If I'm not, maybe I'm wrong, Max. Somebody in the chat correct me if I'm wrong. The play where Tyrod made the mistake was not the play I was referring to. The play that Tyrod made the mistake was the last play before the half, where he did audible to a run when we had no timeouts left. And then we weren't able to spike the ball for the field goal. That was on Tyrod. I'm referring to the last play of the game when we had the ball on the 1 yard line and he threw it to Waller. I don't think that play was on Tyrod. I think the play you're talking about is a different play than what I was talking about. But yes, that play was on Tyrod. Let's see. Gano would have won the Jets and Rams game. Yeah. Danny Symes said we had so many close games this year, even though it was a disappointing season. We could have been. I agree, but we say that every year that it's a disappointing year. But you're right, and that's the nature of the NFL, right? It's a game of inches. Chris, when are you getting another Giant? I don't know, man. Hopefully, I almost had Justin Pugh on the channel, and then that kind of felt. So this is what happened with Justin Pugh. Justin Pugh's. I don't think it's actually Justin Pugh. It's like the guy who runs Justin Pugh's like Twitter account reached out to me, and he asked me when I was available, and and then he said during the bye week, he's like, "We'll get back to you," and he got back to me on the bye week, and he's like, "What days you free?" And I'm like, "Just let me know Justin's availability, and we'll try to make it work." And he told me Justin's availability was 10:30 a.m. on like a Thursday, and I'm like, "Well, I work." I'm like, "I can't do that." Now, if you were Eli Manning, I call out sick, but you're not. But that was, yeah. So I was supposed to have him, but the schedule just didn't match up. Let's see. That game was the worst game in the 2023 season for the entire, yeah. But it would be interesting to get Justin Pugh on, just to get or any former player on, to get more of a, maybe somebody, especially if they leave the team, to get more of an in-depth look of the insides of the locker room. That would be what I would talk to him about. Nah, I'm good with that, Simeon. Eli, Tuck, Strahan, I'll take a PTO. I'll take some of my flex time. I'll take 2-3 hours out of my workday, but no, not for Justin Pugh. Let's see. Jacob says, Tana, if we sign quarterback in free agency, does that lean more? Yes, of course. Too bad about Justin. He was asking what shows he should go on, and a few of us were telling. I think that's why he did talk to me, Bill, so I appreciate that. I think that's why he reached out to me. But that was why. It was a scheduling conflict. He did reach out to me, or whoever it was. I don't think it was him again. I think it was his manager. But they reached out to me, but it didn't match up. H5000 says the home Dallas 40-0 game was nothing more and nothing less than the worst coach game I've seen. That H5000, that was Brian Dable's worst coach game since he's been a Giants head coach. And it has very little to do with the score. because they just ramsacked us. Like they killed us in the trenches, start to finish. It was his handling of Daniel Jones in that game. And the people that hate Daniel Jones are like, leave him out there anyway. But in the world of reality, you just came off an offseason where you paid him $160 million. Your team is down 40-0. It's pouring rain. You pulled all your starters out with 3 minutes to go. Micah Parsons has been teeing off on your quarterback all game with the shitty offensive line that you have to begin with. Now you have all backup offensive linemen in there, and you leave them in the game with 3 minutes to go, down 40-0 in the pouring rain. That was one of the dumbest decisions I've ever seen a coach make. That was bad. That was bad. Let's see. Adam says there are so many holes in the roster and so few resources to throw at them. Do you think we're set up for failure? I mean, I don't think we're going to fix it all next year, if that's what your question is. I mean, I hope we do, but I don't think we're going. Give2 says, I saw us as a possibility of signing Minshew as a backup, a younger and cheaper Tyrod Taylor. I kind of agree. I think we could do both, but if you're asking me what's more likely, signing somebody like Minshew or drafting a quarterback or trading up for a quarterback, I would lean more towards signing a guy like Minshew. I don't think we're going to draft a quarterback with our first pick. Let's see. I think I just lost the chat. I'm going to hang out with you guys for about 5-10 more minutes, and we're going to call it a stream. Yeah, I saw that rumor. We'll see if it happens. Xavier says, I hope the Cowboys don't blow us out season opener this year. I mean, I hope we don't play them season opener. It seems like we play them every season opener. Cushman. Good to see Cushman. I talk with him on Twitter every now and again. He's awesome. Been a loyal subscriber of mine forever. Diehard Knicks, Yankees, Giants fan. He says, you're in the top 7.657 humans of all time. Well, that's a huge compliment coming from you, Cushman. But what qualifies as a 0.657 of a human? Are we incorporating? How do you do that? Is that are we talking about? I ain't gonna get politically incorrect, but how do we determine 0.657? But I appreciate that I'm in your top 8 of all time. Let's see. Brandon says, Chris, good to be back. I go wide receiver first, offensive tackle in the second, and then edge. I never like to say we definitely have to take this position in this spot, but I agree with you on the wide receiver in the first. That's my prediction right now. Tana, you concerned about your Johnnies? Yes, I think St. John's is they're trending in the wrong direction off of the last couple of games. I was really excited about them, and then they lost a really close game. I forgot who they played, but they lost a really close game. Then they got beat pretty badly by Xavier on the road, and then UConn spanked them. Watched the game yesterday, and they lost by like 13. So, yeah, I think they're on the wrong side of the bubble right now. Let's see. It's my special calculation. Well, I appreciate that, Cushman. Let's see. I pray for the country first, people and their families, and then the Giants. Okay. Robert says, realistically, probably going to take 2 to 3 seasons to have a solid competitive team. Yeah, unless Daniel Jones somehow becomes a great quarterback, I can't disagree with that. More than likely, we'll take that, yes. If it all goes according to plan and we draft properly and build well. Cup of Tea says, Malik Neighbors, you are a New York Giant. We'll see. I would love him. I would love him to be a New York Giant. I'm excited to see him in a Giants uniform if we get him. Obviously, naturally, he's going to get compared right out of the gate to Odell Beckham, being that he'd be the 6th overall pick, being the school that he went to, naturally, same as Odell. But I'm excited, man. I'll have to listen to the stream later. Have a good one. You too, Mickey. When the World Cup happens, MetLife Stadium has to use grass. Hopefully. If that's true, then that's great. That means we'll have grass by 2026 at the latest. Bookend says, I think if the line plays average ball, this team will be in it. I don't want to sound too optimistic, Bookend. I don't. Because every time I do that, I get burned. Every time I do that, I get burned. But theoretically speaking, if the Giants somehow, which they never do, have an average offensive line next year, I think we're a playoff team. If we stay healthy, relatively healthy, which we never do. I just think with our coaching I think we are a playoff team. I don't think we're much more than that, but I think we could be a playoff team. But we're probably not going to be an average offensive line because that's the way the cookie crumbles usually with this team. Let's see. Ridiculous Nicholas says a lot of mid-round running backs rather let Saquon walk and draft a guy. I would tag Saquon and dangle him out for a trade too. Yeah, I think that's where we're looking at, Nicholas, man. I do. I think there's a strong chance that's exactly what we may do if we can't work out. I think we're going to try to work out a deal, but here's what I think is going to happen. This is the way I look at the Saquon thing. Like, all signs point to that they're going to try to get something done. And I think the tag deadline is like March 7th. Like, it's early March. But Saquon has already gotten rid of his agent from last year with Rock Nation. That didn't work. He's gotten an agent now with CAA. And if you remember late in the process last year, he kind of had like dual agents. Like, once things weren't working out with Rock Nation, he signed on with CAA, who I believe is, I can't recall, the same agency that represented Daniel Jones, who, of course, they got a deal done with. He's now with them. So, and reports have come out that Shane intends to speak with Saquon's agents, I believe, during the combine, like shortly before the tag deadline. So I'm sure they're going to try to work a deal out. But this is the way I look at it, and I've said it several times. Why would Joe Shane be willing to give Saquon Barkley more money this year? Why? And why would Saquon be willing to take less? Maybe he will. And I hope he does, because that means there's a chance we could keep him. But what is the incentive for Shane? Shane has already showed you he doesn't think emotionally when it comes to Saquon Barkley. He knows that it will be a overwhelming popular opinion amongst the fan base if he would have signed him last year. He didn't do it. He has less of a reason to do it this year. The team is coming off a bad year, not a good year. He's a year older. He got hurt. Didn't play as well. He had a 3.9 yards per carry. Not his fault. The offensive line was bad. But I don't see it. I don't see Saquon coming back enough where Joe Shane's going to be like, let's do this. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope they get something done. But I could see a tag and trade scenario. I could. Give two, man. Have a good night, man. And Ethan says, don't know football? Get the hell out of my stream. One of the highlights early on the channel, yes. Tane, have you looked at Roman? Of course I have. Yeah. I what's up, Cressy, man? Thanks for popping in. I like Michigan. And I think Roman Wilson, if I recall, had a really good Senior Bowl. I think I heard write-ups about that. He's good. I don't think he's great, but he's probably a late day 2 wide receiver. Probably a round 3 guy. But yeah, I've seen Roman Wilson play. He's a good player. He had a touchdown in the national championship. Togo says Joe Shane doesn't want to pay Saquon $12 million next season, which he would get on the tag. He may tag him to trade him. Joe Shane is going to Moneyball this year's Giants team. Draft picks, low cost free agent, fill gaps. That's what he did last year. I expect a very similar offseason to last year. He's going to, because he doesn't really have any players on this team now to extend. He got that out of the way last year. When I say extend, I mean like multi-year, long-term extensions, like Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence. Jones was an extension, but we know how he made that deal. It's basically a 2-year deal. The other guys are longer commitments. I think he will have 1 or 2 fairly big signings in free agency, because they do have to put forth a decent product this year. In my opinion, they can't win 4 or 5 games and Dable expects to keep his job. And if Dable loses his job, that looks bad on Shane. So I do think they're going to try to get a few impact players in free agency, but I don't think they're going to go bananas. Stand up. What's going on, Noquan, man? Thanks for popping in. Brandon says BPA is the way to go. That's how we got and selected Lawrence Taylor. We had a decent linebacker in Brian Kelly in 1981, but George Young selected the best player available. And that's what I expect us to do. And I think when push comes to shove, the best player is either going to be a tackle or a wide receiver where we're picking. But we'll see on draft night. We got a long way to go. Hyatt has raw talent, but do we have time? Why don't we have time? We got all the time in the world. Our team sucks. We got time. Abe, stand up. He says, how much you willing to spend to trade up for a quarterback? The deal I said earlier, that I mean, that's what it would cost. And what I will say, and that's 2 firsts and 2 seconds. That's a swap of first this year. If we're talking the first pick, it's 6-1. It's a first the following draft, maybe a second the draft after that, and a second this year. That's probably the estimated cost. That's what it would be, I think. So, and my answer to you is, if you feel that that guy is going to be the next Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes level talent, or could be, if you're a GM, you take that swing. You don't know when you'll get an opportunity like that again at the most important position, and you worry about building your roster over the next 3 or 4 years to support the quarterback. Of course, if you miss on that quarterback or you don't support him properly, you're going to lose your job. But if you never take a swing, you're probably going to lose your job too eventually. So if you love a quarterback, that's the going rate. That's what it would cost. And I'm going to continue to say it. I don't think it's going to be available. I don't think Chicago's trading out. But guys, I'm going to close it out. You guys have a great rest of your night. I will definitely have a video up when we do sign our defensive coordinator, which I have to assume will be probably within a week or maybe a little bit more than that, maybe shortly after the Super Bowl. So I'll definitely have a video out on that. Anything else that drops throughout, the offseason for sure. Have my first mock draft out probably in a week after the Super Bowl. We'll start to get into free agency probably the week after that, and looking forward to it, guys. You guys have a great rest of your night, and let's go Giants. Let's find a way to let's win the Super Bowl next year. That'd be great. Evan, be good, man. Papa Goose, be good. Zach Attack, be good. Bookend Tackles, be good. Side Guy, be good. You guys have a great rest of your night. Enjoy whatever you're going to watch. I don't even know. Knicks aren't playing tonight, so I don't know what the hell I'm going to watch. But maybe I'll watch a show. By the way, for all you show viewers out there, quick recommendation. We didn't get into movie talk today. I binged a show this weekend. For anybody that's into the Netflix, the Amazons, whatever, I suggest checking it out. Go on Amazon. And normally Amazon doesn't make great shows. I enjoyed it. 8 episodes. Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Didn't love the movie. Thought the show was good. Check it out. But guys, be good. I will talk to you soon. Have a good night, guys.